Welcome to JonGetsGames. Today, I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Gloomhaven. Inside this massive box lies an expansive fantasy world full of dungeon delving, tactical card-based combat, fully cooperative play, and an epic campaign consisting of almost 100 different scenarios. For today's playthrough, I'll actually be showing how to play with the random dungeon generator so that I won't be showing any spoilers for the campaign, but also I'll be able to show you a variety of different enemies we can fight, as well as how 3 of the starting classes work. I'll explain how the game plays while we're actually playing it, so let's jump in. Here we have our party assembled with 3 brand new level 1 characters. We'll be playing the game through the perspective of this human scoundrel over here named Absolar. We also have an Inox Brute named Icarium, and finally an Orchid Spellweaver named Tattersail. Each of these characters has their own personal quest, which is their driving force behind why they're going out and adventuring and questing. They consist of one of these cards in this large deck. However, because I'm trying to show as few spoilers as possible in this video, we're just going to say that each of them has their own personal quest, but we're not actually going to be showing any of these because these really only pertain to a long-term campaign, and I'm only showing one scenario here. Let's briefly look a little bit closer at our player area. We see we have this player board which tracks how much health we have, as well as how much experience we've accrued throughout the scenario. Down here we see a couple items which I've purchased. Now every level 1 character begins the game with 30 gold, and you'll see that I've spent that 30 gold getting myself a minor stamina potion, as well as a leather armor, and I'll explain how these work when we're actually in the scenario. At the moment, we're actually in the town of Gloomhaven, and that is why we're able to buy these items. In fact, all the other characters have already bought their 30 gold worth of items as well. Today, the party has decided they don't have a specific goal in mind. They're going to do a random dungeon scenario. And the way we do this is we're going to draw a random card from the top of this deck and the top of this deck to form the first part of our 3-tiered scenario dungeon. So we're going to flip this over, and we see that we are going to be going to a cutthroat hovel. So what we do here is we look to this card, and it tells us all of the different enemies, as well as traps and other different things like treasure chests. And on this card, we see the shape of the dungeon, as well as all the different locations we put all of these different items and enemies, as well as our potential entrances. We have 2 in this case, and the exit we're trying to run to. There are minor and major detriments down at the bottom, but the suggested difficulty level has the first room with 0 penalties. The second room will do the minor, and if we make it to the third room, we're going to take a major penalty to try and get through that spot. So here all 3 of us are entering now into the cutthroat hovel. We see that there are some hounds, some bandit archers, as well as some bandit guards, and these traps that are scattered around will do 3 damage to us if we walk on them, and they'll poison us, so we definitely don't want to do that. We have some tables and crates that are going to get in our way, but really what we're trying to do here is kill all 6 of these enemies and then progress into the next door. Once we open that door, we'll see another random room, and we don't have to kill everything before we open that door, but it's probably a good idea. Down the middle, we can see the 3 different stat cards for the 3 different types of enemies we'll be fighting, as well as their 3 individual action decks. Here we can track all of the damage as well as negative effects that we can apply to them. We also see how much damage they do, how fast they move, and some special effects they might have like Retaliate and Shield. If you look in the top right corner of our player board, we see the number 9, and this is the number of cards we're allowed to enter the dungeon with. And in fact, this character, no matter how much they level up, will always be able to begin the scenario with 9 cards. It's essentially their stamina level. So if you look at the actual cards we have in our hand, most of the cards have this little 1 because they are level 1 cards. But as we get through here, we will find one of these as an X. And in fact, each of the characters begins the game with 3 of these X cards, so they have a little bit of variety and deck construction they can do before they actually go into the dungeon. So I've already gone through here and decided that I don't think I need these 3 cards here. You'll notice that 2 of them are level 1s and 1 is an X, which means we have 2 of the X action cards in this deck. And in general, the X's are slightly more complicated, but I think they're pretty darn interesting, and I think it's going to work out well for the scenario. So we are not going to be playing with throwing knives, trickster's reversal, or thieves knack, and these are the ones we're going to go with. Next up, we need to pick a battle goal, and these are quite important because you're never allowed to tell your companions what your specific goal is. These are going to kind of dictate what you are doing and how you're going to do it in the dungeon. Of course, this is a fully cooperative game, so you all want to win the scenario, but these might subtly tweak the way you actually do it based on trying to get these check marks. This first one says Scrambler, and it says take only short rests during the scenario. Now you can take short or long rests, and when you do a short rest, you have a little less control over your card pool, but you don't lose an entire turn. So if I only take short rests, then that's good. We'll just be running around hitting things, but we might lose some cards we don't want, and we'll go into that when we actually hit it in the game. And our other option is Purist. It says use no items during the scenario. And you'll notice that there are 2 check marks on the bottom of this one and only 1 check mark down here. Now, I think items are pretty darn great. We have a stamina potion, which we will almost certainly need, so I don't think we're going to try and do the purist. Let's go ahead and do the scrambler and try to only take short rests. At this point, you might be wondering what the check marks are actually for, and at the end of the scenario, as long as you complete the scenario, then you can fill in a number of check marks on that card down here as it was on the card. And every time you get 3 of these check marks, you actually gain a perk, which will let you fill in one of these spots and actually let you modify your combat deck. And I'll show you the combat deck rather soon, and you'll see why some of these things would be really nice to take out some of the negative cards and put some very cool stuff in there. But honestly, getting these check marks is a multi-campaign thing, so we won't actually be seeing the perks in the scenario, but we still know that we're going to want to grab at that check mark if it's at all possible. Lastly, each player figures out which equipment they are going to want to start the dungeon with. Right now, we all only have 2 pieces of equipment, so we can do that. However, it's important to note you're not allowed to have multiple types of armor on you, and at level 1, you can only carry one of these consumable type things like the potions. It's now time for us to move into the hovel and start trying to wipe out all of these enemies. On every single turn, each player is going to simultaneously select 2 cards from their hand, and they will be evaluating the top half of one of these cards and the bottom half of another. You'll notice there are these numbers in the middle of each of these cards, and this is the initiative value with which you will be taking your entire turn. So for instance, if I picked these 2 cards here, I could either take the whole turn at initiative 86, which is very slow, or initiative 36, which is relatively fast. The initiatives range from 1 to 99, and you go from the bottom and move all the way to the top. Now, while I'm figuring out what I want to do in my hand, I'm also discussing my options with my various companions. And the only thing we're not allowed to tell each other is specific numbers that are on our cards, and we don't want to be too specific with our actual plans because we're kind of coming up with a plan and then evaluating it. So I can't mention that, okay, I'm going to be going on initiative 36. I'm just going to tell them, I think what I'm going to do is kind of hang back. I'm going to move relatively quickly, try to do some range damage, and I'm going to set up some long-term options for myself because the bottom part of this card I think is something really good for us to get into play. This is the single out, and it says that on your next 4 attacks targeting enemies adjacent to none of their allies, we'd gain +2 to those attacks. And you'll notice that these little 4 spots, this is how you track how many times you've used it, but also this little star pattern in the middle and the 1 says that each time we do this, we gain an experience. So this is a very good card to use. We'll use it permanently once it's been used 4 times, but I think right now is a good time to kind of get this active, kind of hang back because we don't have that many hit points, and the Brute Icarium over here does have a lot of hit points, so we don't want to get into the fray too much and take too much damage on this first turn. I mean, honestly, if we got too close, we could just die in this first turn, and we certainly don't want that to happen. So the Brute Icarium, he mentions that he's probably going to be moving in and doing lots of damage to all sorts of things, and not to worry about this hound at all. He's going to be taking care of that one. And the Spellweaver Tattletale mentions they don't have an amazing turn lined up for themselves right now. They're going to move relatively fast and try to do an okay amount of damage to one of these various things. So we think we're just going to go ahead with this plan. We'll do a nice ranged attack here. Attack of 3 is pretty good. It's range 4, which means we can go 1, 2, 3, 4 hexagons away from where we currently are. Sorry, we're right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's important to note that you can shoot through enemies. As far as line of sight is concerned, the obstacles and enemies and even your friends do not actually get in your way. So this is going to give us quite a few options, and we're going to put the 36 down so that we move relatively fast. I think there's no reason to go crazy slow. Well, actually, if we went really slow, then we would potentially go after some of the enemies, and maybe they'd get a little bit closer and maybe actually be split up so that we can take advantage of this bonus here. You know what, let's do that. We're going to move at 86 on this turn, and now we can wait for both of our companions to figure out their specific actions. All of us have now selected our actions, and now we can reveal the action cards for the different enemies to see not only how fast they move, but what exactly they do. So over here we have the Hound. We see that it moves very fast at 7. It is going to move at its regular rate, and it's going to muddle all of its target adjacent enemies, which means it's not actually going to be attacking us. It would only attack if it said attack on this card, but muddling is not good. That makes it harder for us to actually land hits. Next up we have the Guard, and oh, interesting, they're not moving at all. They're just going to shield up, and they would retaliate and do 2 damage back to anybody that hit them on this turn. And then finally we have the Archers. They are going to be moving a little slower than normal, and then attacking even harder than normal. But we see that they move at 44, which is relatively slow. The Guards are actually quite fast. Now we can flip over all of our cards, and we see that we are going at 86. We see that Icarium is going at 32, and finally Tattersail over here is going at 36. When we look at all the initiative values, we see that the Hound is going to be going first.
And when we look at the figures on the board, we see both of them have this white base, which means they are a regular enemy, which means we can look to the left-hand side of their stat board over here, and the top value is going to be the amount of health they have. So it's going to be 4 damage in order to kill these hounds. The second one is their speed. They get to move at 4. The third one is how much damage they do, which is 2, but again, they would only do that if they attacked. And they're not actually attacking this turn. So we go ahead and start activating any gold-based ones first, which there are none, and then we activate them in ascending order. So we see that this back one is number 2, and this front one is number 5. So the back one is going to move first. Its movement is 4, which is not modified by this. It says +0. So that means that this hound is going to get as close as it can to one of us. It's going to kind of focus on the closest one, which right now is going to be Icarium, because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots away versus the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots that we are from this hound. But the big difference here is that whenever there's a tie in the overall hexes on the board, you look to the initiative value. Icarium went first, so they win the tie. That means this hound is going to move up and focus on this character, and if it was doing a multi-character attack, it would try to hit more than one, but right now it's just trying to go over here, so we can move 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, we see that it is going to target all adjacent enemies with a muddle effect. Well, this is going to be just Icarium for the moment. This means that they actually have to draw 2 combat cards and pick the worst one in the next time they evaluate their turn, so this goes over to them. And now the other hound does the same thing. They once again fixate on Icarium over here. They want to get as close as possible, and as you can see, you can always move through your own ally spaces, so we can move through our companions, and our enemies can move through the other enemies. So that means this one is just going to move over to here, and unfortunately, it is now also adjacent to us, so it muddles both of us again. You can never be muddled twice, so it doesn't really have any effect on Icarium, but that means that we are also going to get one of these tokens. Next up, we evaluate the guards card because it is at 15, but once again, they just gain a shield, which means they take 1 less damage this turn, and then they retaliate for 2. Anything that is in melee range to them, they'll punch back for 2 damage, but they don't actually move or attack this turn, so they just kind of hang out over there, which is potentially a good thing for us, because this guy is now alone based on the cards that we picked, but let's see how the rest of this evaluates first. Next up in initiative order, we have Icarium with 32. You'll notice they could have picked 27 as well, but they wanted to go a little bit slower, hoping for some of these enemies to activate first, because as you'll notice, they are now going to do the top of this card, which is an attack 3, push 2, and then the bottom of this card is also an attack. So this way, they wanted enemies to come to them so that they could just smack them down. Now, the situation is a little bit different. They thought they would be actually killing off this hound over here by using their boots of striding, which would give them essentially a free movement of 2 on their turn, but this situation is actually a little bit better for them. They're going to open up with this, let's see, what is this? Warding Strength attack. So it's an attack 3, push 2, and he's attacking this hound right here. Attack 3 means that we are right now doing 3 damage to that enemy, but we of course have to draw from our damage modifier deck right here, and since we're muddled, we have to draw the top 2 cards and pick the worst one. So the first one is a +0, that's not too bad, we're still doing 3 damage, and the other one is a +1. Okay, so this means that we are just going to do 3 damage instead of the +1, because 3 is definitely worse than 4, and unfortunately this is going to stick around for the entirety of Icarium's turn. We now have to put the 3 damage out, and if we look over here, we see that this is hound number 5. On the sleeve over here, we see hounds 1 through 6 as a possibility, so we're going to put these 3 damage down on the 5 slot to show that that is the one that took the 3 damage, but we're not quite done yet. If you remember, the second part of this card says push 2, and whenever you evaluate actions on cards, you always start at the top and move to the bottom. So he's now evaluated the attack, the hound has 5 health, but he's taken 3 damage, so 2 more kills it, and now it does a push, and when you push anything, it always has to end up farther away from you than it started. So what this means is that Icarium is going to push this 1, 2 right into this trap over here. Now this is a poison trap that does 3 damage and also poisons this hound right here, but the poison doesn't really matter because when it takes 3 damage, it's going to put it up to 6. It only takes 5 to kill them, so that means that this trap is now gone because it's a one-time use, and this hound also dies. Whenever a non-summoned enemy dies, you put a money down on the board, and this can be looted by any of our characters if we land on that spot and end our turn there, or use other loot abilities. And this is just one way for us to get some extra money, and we pull the health markers off to show that this hound is gone. Unfortunately, there's one more thing we have to evaluate though, and that is that since we did the attack and then the push, and the attack did not kill this hound over here, we see that it has this retaliate 1 ability, and it would only not do that if the attack action killed it right out. So that means it did retaliate once back at our brute here, so they are going to take 1 damage. Fortunately, he's got lots of life, so this brings him from 10 down to 9. At this point, Akarium has only done half of their turn with this top half of Warding Strength. They now do the bottom half of the Spare Dagger, and we see that it is just an attack 2 damage. This is a melee attack, and the only thing they can hit in melee is this Hound over here. It does mean that they'll get retaliated against again. Unfortunately, they are still muddled, so they have to draw 2 cards again. So this is 2 + 1 or 2 - 1, and they have to take the worst one, so that means that this is going to be 2 - 1 or just a 1 damage attack. With this, their turn is essentially over, so we can remove this muddle token. Hound number 2 takes 1 damage, and unfortunately they retaliate 1 back to Akarium. This brings him down to 8 life, and his turn is now over. We can now take the cards that he played and put them over to the left-hand side of the player board, showing that they have been discarded, but they can pull these up when they rest later on in the game. It's now Tattersail's turn, and they are going at an initiative of 36, and they have a couple options here because their original plan did not work out too well. What they were really hoping would happen is that there would be an enemy within range 2, so they could do an attack range 2 down here and get an experience, and then do an attack for range 3 over here, essentially just standing here and hitting things twice. Unfortunately, there's nothing within range 2 because, well, Akarium destroyed that Hound, and since Tattersail's here, that's 1/2, there's nothing quite there. So essentially, they need to not use one of these 2 cards because one thing I didn't mention before is that you can always ignore the top or bottom text, and for the top, just do a 2 damage melee attack, or on the bottom, you could do a movement of 2. So they do have the possibility of moving 2 and then doing a 3 damage attack over here, or they could just sit where they are and do a 2 damage attack at range 3, which they are actually able to do. Now this Hound over here only needs 3 damage to die, so doing a 2 damage attack, it is possible that we'd be able to kill it off. The issue is if they moved a couple spaces over here and then did their 3 damage attack, which would make them slightly more likely to do so, well then they would be taking fire from this elite archer over here, and we know that the archers, unfortunately, are doing +1 damage this round. Since it's still early in the scenario, they decide they're going to just hedge their bets and not do anything crazy. They're going to essentially ignore this card, unfortunately, and they're just going to evaluate the top one here. They'll do a 2 damage attack at range 3. Unfortunately, they would have had the ability to consume any of these elemental infusions in the air if any of them were actually out, but you see that all of them are inert. Once an action happens like this one right here that bumps up one of these tokens, and then it kind of falls down over the course of a couple turns, and since this is the first turn and nothing else has made of these elements yet, they don't get the bonus of this +1 attack and this experience. So this right now is just a 2 damage attack. Fortunately, they are not muddled, so they just draw the top card, and alright, it's a +1, so that means that's 2 + 1 or 3 damage. And this is just barely enough to actually kill off the Hound, and since this is a ranged attack, the Retaliate doesn't even come into play, so this Hound is dead. We add a coin to the board, and we're doing a pretty good job of wiping out our enemies so far. Unfortunately, because we decided to go very slow on this turn, the archers are now going to go before us. And we see that they move at -1, and their regular movement over here is 2 and 2, whether or not they are elite or not. So they only move 1. However, over on the board, both of them have the range to actually hit things because their range are 4 and 5, so very long range hitters. So they don't need to move anyway, and they're now both going to attack at +1. You see that the regular archer does 2 damage normally, so that's doing 3 damage, and this elite archer over here is actually doing 3 + 1 or 4 damage this turn. Elite enemies always attack first, and we see over here that Akarium is 1, 2, 3 away, and we are 1, 2, 3 away. Since Akarium went before us, in fact, we haven't gone at all yet, that means that the archer is going to shoot him, and they draw the top card from the deck, and oh nice, we are in luck. That is 4 - 2 or only 2 damage. That could have been a lot worse. And this brings his health down to 6. Next up, we have the regular archer, who is also tied between us and Akarium, but once again, he wins the tie, so they draw the top card, and it's a +0. The regular archers are doing 3 damage this round, so unfortunately, it actually did more damage than that elite one. And this brings him down all the way to 3. I think he's definitely going to be needing some healing. I mean, he does have this minor healing potion, and this can be used once per scenario to just generate 3 health. And in fact, I think there's no time like the present. They're just going to go ahead and use this right now. They're not going to gain access to it again, so that is 3 health right back, bringing them up to 6. Lastly, it's finally our turn to activate at 86, and we have a couple different options here. The first one is we could do this bottom bit here, which, as I mentioned before, would make the next 4 attacks that are going against an enemy that is not next to any of their allies a +2 attack, which is really rather nice and a good amount of experience. But we have a new option down here. We have this move 4 and then loot every hex that you enter with this action. So, well, we could go 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, man, no, we can't quite get to that. We could go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I guess there's realistically no way we can loot 2 coins with his action, so it probably doesn't actually make sense. Although, moving is not the worst thing in the world considering everything else is activated already, and we can potentially go very fast on the next turn to do something and maybe get out of the way. But I don't think we should be too crafty. Let's go ahead and get this bottom thing going, and we're going to put that in front of our area, and now we'll do this top action, which is a range 4 attack of 3. Now, unfortunately, this lone guard over here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away from us, so we won't actually be able to use the bonus down here on this turn, but I'm sure we'll actually have that opportunity as we actually play the game more. So we are going to not move. We are just going to do a range 4 attack, and we could hit any of these, and I figure these archers do quite a bit of damage, and they're somewhat fragile, so let's go ahead and shoot this non-elite archer over here because it's more likely that we can kill it off before it activates a second time on the next turn. Before we actually do that though, I want to show you how activating this bottom part works. We're going to take one of our tokens and just put it on there, and we're going to slide it to the right and then down and over as we continue to do this. Alright, so let's now do our 3 damage attack. Unfortunately, we are muddled still, that pesky hound, so we flip over the top card, it's +1, and we flip over the other card, oh man, it's -2. Alright, well that means we are doing only 1 damage to that archer this turn. That was really painful being muddled this turn, but fortunately the hounds are gone. We don't have to worry about that potentially happening again for a while. When we look closely, we see this is archer number 3, so they take 1 damage out of the 5 total to kill it. With our turn done, the overall round is complete. We now do a little bit of cleanup. If any of these elements were infused, we'd move them down a bit, and whenever any of the cards have this little circly symbol down here, that means you're going to reshuffle that specific stack. It could be the actions for the specific monsters, but it could also be the modifier decks for us and for the enemies. It's now time for us to plan out our second turn. We are looking at our various options, and we know that we have a +2 damage if we are to attack something that is not next to anything else. And despite going very slow in the last turn, we actually have some very fast potential cards in our hand, and we can move quite fast while doing it. We're talking to our companions, and Tattersail mentions that they have a pretty good heal, and they're actually going to be healing up Ikariam because Ikariam took a lot of damage in that last round. Ikariam says they're just going to be getting in the fray and trying to do an area of effect attack, and they might not be able to necessarily kill the archers, but they're kind of trying to do a lot of damage to the archers on this turn. And I think that we want to maybe keep our options open a little bit to see what the new actions are for the various monsters. I guess there are no hounds anymore, and I think this is probably a pretty good turn for us. We can move exceptionally fast by going at 4, and what we can do is move 5, and then we can attack for 3, poison the target, get an experience, and the thing about moving 5 is that it lets us potentially go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, loot this gold, and attack this for 3 +2 because it's not adjacent to anybody. That's 5 damage on an elite minion that does have 1 shield, and shields absorb 1 damage, so that's the thing to keep in mind, but it would be poisoned for future rounds. I think this is a relatively flexible call if we do this, and depending on how the other actions pop up, maybe we'll change our plan on the fly, but for now, let's go very fast at 4 initiative. Now that we have all decided, we can flip over the cards. So first of all, we have the guards over here. We see they move pretty slowly, and they are just very basic. They move at regular and they attack at regular, so nothing too scary there. And then over here with the archers, they move slowly, they attack slowly, but if we notice down here, they're a little bit more special. They say they create a 3 damage trap in an adjacent empty hex closest to the enemy. And they move pretty darn fast at 14. Fortunately, we are faster than that. So we flip over, we show that we are moving at 4. We see that Ikariam the Brute is actually moving at 10, which is surprisingly fast, and Tattersail the Spellweaver is moving at 21. We are the first to take our action, but now that all the cards are revealed, we can openly discuss what our plans are, and we see that Ikariam is planning on moving here to grab that gold, and then do this skewer attack, which will attack both of these archers over here, and that is a 3 damage attack. It'll also give them experience, which is pretty nice. Now, odds are very low that they're actually going to kill any of these archers by doing this attack, but I think I like our kind of assassinate plan anyway, of just running over here, poisoning, and doing a punch of damage over to this guard before he does anything else, particularly to us. He's going to attack us back, and they do 3 damage, and we only have 8 life, but I think this is still a pretty cool plan, kind of goes into our overall character. We're going to grab some gold and do a little bit of a backstab, so let's go ahead and do it. We're going to move for 5 to start. And now we do our attack of 3. Since that elite guard is by themselves, we actually move this tick over to show that we are using this, which is going to add +2 to our attack, so we're actually attacking at 5, and since we revealed that experience token, we now get 1 experience, and no matter what happens, even if we all become exhausted and we lose a scenario, you still always accrue any gold and experience that you've picked up throughout the dungeon. So getting experience is good. You can see here, in order to level up to level 2, you need 45 experience. So it's a little bit of a hill to climb, although you get a nice chunk of experience when you successfully complete a scenario, which we may or may not do. So let's go ahead and evaluate our 5 damage attack. We draw the top card from our deck, and oh my gosh, that's nice. That is a 6 damage attack. This is also going to poison that elite guard and get us 1 more experience. So just with that, we are now at 2 experience. And we see that since the guard does have this shield, that means we do -1, so it's 6 -1 or 5 damage total, which is more than half than we need to actually get to the 9 to kill them. And this poison essentially negates the shield on that guard, so they're going to be easier to kill as we actually do more damage to it. Lastly, you always auto-loot anything underneath you at the end of your turn, so we get this 1 gold piece, and since this is a level 1 dungeon, this is actually technically worth 2 gold to us at the end of the scenario. Again, we get to keep this whether or not we actually succeed in the scenario or not. Next up, we have Icarium, and they're going to use the bottom part of this card just to move 2, and they're actually only going to move once over here. They will actually get this gold at the end of the round, and now they're going to do this skewer attack. It is an attack for 3. Unfortunately, there is no wind essence for us to consume, or for them to consume, to gain some extra attack, but they will get this 1 experience and damage both of these archers. This brings him up to 1 experience, and whenever you do multi-target attacks, you draw 1 card from the top of your deck for each individual one. So let's go ahead and look, and they can kind of take their pick to see which one they want to target first. Since this is a skewering attack, they figure they'll hit this close archer first. They draw the top card, and oh, nice. That is the critical hit. This is a 20-card deck overall. There are some zeros, pluses, ones, -1s, -2s. There's also a miss card and 1 2x card. You'll notice this symbol means at the end of their turn, they're going to have to reshuffle all of their modifiers, but right now that means they did 3 × 2 or 6 damage to this archer. Well, regular archers only take 6, only have 5 life, so this just automatically kills it. They drop a gold down onto the spot, and now they get to do more damage to this one over here. They were really happy with that result, not exactly expecting it, so now they do 3 damage to this elite archer. Maybe it's going to be good, and no, that's a little bit worse. Okay, so they actually only do 2 damage to this elite archer over here. They have 7 health. They kind of wish maybe they would have done the critical hit on that archer there, but I guess they wouldn't have killed it, and this does lower the amount of damage that we're all going to be taking this round. The elite archer is number 6. We can put that over here, and we can clear this off, of course. Oh man, it looks like they really overkilled that number 3 archer. They did 6 damage. It only needed 4 to die, but hey, it's nice not having them out on the map. Speaking of the archers, it's now their turn to take an action at 14 initiative. We see they move at -1, they attack at -1, and there's only 1 archer left. It is the elite one, so normally they attack at 3, so their attack is only a 2, and then after they do that attack, they're going to create that 3 damage trap closest to one of their enemies in an adjacent spot. Icarium is closer to this archer than any of the rest of us, so he gets attacked again. They draw the top card from the deck, and oh, that's unfortunate. That's, I guess it's 3 -1 +1, so the archer is going to do 3 damage to him, which brings him back down to 3. And then they create this 3 damage trap in an adjacent spot closest to an enemy, so it goes right there. And I think just to differentiate from the other traps, because these are both poison, I'm just going to put little poison tokens down on those so I don't forget. It's now time for Tattersail's turn. They're going to use the bottom part of this card just to move 2. So they'll go 1, 2, just kind of get a little bit closer to the fray. And then the top part of this aid from the ether is going to heal 3 at range 3. So they're going to heal Icarium for 3 damage. And this brings him back to 6. It seems like he's just bouncing back and forth between 3 and 6 quite a bit this game. At initiative 50, it's finally time for the guards to take an action. We always start with the elite ones first, and it is going to move at 0, but since I'm right next to it, it doesn't need to move at all because it already has a good target. It's now going to attack me for +0. Its base damage is 3, so we can get the modifier deck out and see that it hits me for 2. Okay, that was somewhat fortunate for us. This brings us from 8 down to 6, which is apparently a popular health to be at because, well, all 3 of us are at that since the Tattersail only has a maximum health of 6. Lastly, guard number 4 is going to move over here so that they are in range of Icarium, and they're going to do a regular attack, which is just 2 against him. We draw from the top of the deck, and we see that, oh man, it's a +1, so that's actually 3 damage. Once more, he is back down to 3 life. With that, we are done with that round. The brute player, of course, has to shuffle up their modifier deck because they pulled out that critical hit, so we can kind of Shuffle this up. Hopefully they'll hit it again soon instead of hitting that miss, which fortunately no one has hit yet. I guess we wouldn't mind it if the monsters hit their one miss as well. We're now moving into the third turn, and we need to once again figure out what we're going to do. Our hand size is getting a little bit smaller. We need to pick 2 out of these 5 here, and we are starting to discuss with our companions about what our various options are. Tattersail mentions that they have a pretty good heal that they can continue to get over onto Ikarim because he continues to be relatively low. We are looking at our options. We're right next to this elite bandit over here. They're already poisoned, and they're still by themselves, so we could get that benefit of +2 attack because they're not next to any enemies at the moment. But we also have a pretty cool option here because that archer decided to make that trap. If you look at the bottom part of this card here, it says we can move 3 and then force one adjacent enemy to move once with you controlling the action, and it has to end on a hex adjacent to me. Well, what that means is we could move 1, 2, and then force this archer to move over here, which would actually cause it to take 3 damage and disarm the trap. We mentioned that as a potential thing we could do, like, oh, we can maybe move the archer over there, and Ikarim, the brute, loves that idea. Says, yes, do that, and do it really fast, because if you do that, then I could probably hit multiple different people. And yeah, this sounds like it's all kind of coming together pretty well. The other nice thing about this plan is we can go really fast. We want to do this before maybe anything else moves. And I think that we should go ahead and do these 2 cards. Going at 6 would be certainly very fast. We want to go before the brute because he mentions that it would be really nice to have that happen before he does his action. But I think, you know, we could use this 12 here, but the nice thing about this one is, well, it has this ranged pull, which could be potentially nice, but the top is a one-time use consumable where we can go invisible, and then on the next time we attack, we kind of come out of invisibility and do double damage. I'm not sure how necessary this will be for us at the moment. I think we definitely want to go very fast. So let's just use this 6, and we have this, the top part of the card, we see it says that we could attack for 3, we could add 2 attack and gain 1 experience when the target is adjacent to any of our allies, and we can add 2 attack and gain 1 experience when the target is adjacent to none of its allies. But if we did that, we would actually lose this card permanently. I think instead, let's just go ahead and use this one for the base 2 attack, because that's 2 plus 2 on this guy over here. It might kill him, but realistically our priority is trying to do a cool combo over here. Now that all of us have decided on our actions, we can flip over the ones. We'll start with the guard over here. We see that he's moving quite slow. He's moving at -1 movement as well. He attacks for regular, but afterwards they are going to strengthen themselves. So on the following turn, they will actually get to draw 2 cards from the top of this deck and pick the better one. So it'd be nice for that not to happen. We're probably going to want to try and kill the guard before that actually evaluates. And then for the archer over here, they move really slow actually. But here's the thing, they attack at +1 and range +1, and we're going to cycle this back in the end. So they are not even going to move at all, even if they wanted to. Not that they necessarily will have much opportunity to do that, but they're going to do even more damage. I wonder if we'll be able to kill it off this turn before it does extra damage to us. Well, we can flip over our cards. We see that we are indeed moving at 6, which is very fast. The Brute is moving at 15, and finally the Spellweaver over here is going at 7. Oh, wow. So we are all going very fast this turn, but we are the quickest. So let's go ahead and start off with our plan. We see that the Brute has this attack here, which can attack 2 adjacent enemies to where he is, which is why he's very happy to have this Archer over here so he can smack both that and this guard over here. So we're definitely going to evaluate that overall action. We will start by doing the top part of this card to do a 2 damage attack to this elite bandit over here. Since he is not adjacent to any of his allies, we actually add 2 to that. That's going to gain us an experience, so we're now at 3. And so we'll flip over the top card. We're at 4 plus 0. All right, 4 damage. This is actually awesome because technically we were at 5. Whenever something is poisoned, you add +1 to attacks on it. But since it has this shield, they essentially negate each other. So that means we had a 5 attack coming in. We -1 to that, so it's 4. When we add 5 plus 4, that's 9. That means this is exactly enough for us to kill this bandit off. It's not going to attack us. That is great. In its place, we're going to drop a coin, and now we can evaluate the bottom half of our card. So remember, we get to move 3, and then we will force one adjacent enemy to perform 1 move action. So we will go 1, 2, and force this archer to move over here. This is going to explode the trap, doing 3 damage to this archer. And when you add that to the 2 damage it already had, that means it's at 5 and only takes 2 more in order to die. It's very possible that Ikarim will kill it off this turn. Next up, we have Tattersail with a 7 initiative. They're going to do the bottom part of this action, which will be a heal for 3 at range 1. So fortunately, they're right next to Ikariam over here, who is really hurting. And then for the other part of their turn, they're going to do the top of this crackling air. It is going to give them 4 charges, and it says that on your next 4 attacks, you'll get +1 attack, and on the second and fourth of these evaluations, they will also get 1 experience. So once again, the Brute bounces up to 6 life, just like the rest of us, and now the crackling air goes into effect, and they can put a little token down to show they have the 4 charges. At initiative 15, Ikariam is next, and they're going to evaluate the bottom part of this card, which just gives them a shield of 1 to themselves for the rest of this round, so that just lets them absorb some of the damage they'll potentially be taking. In this instance, unfortunately for us, it looks like this bandit is actually going to attack us and not him, so the bottom part of this card is not going to have any real effect, but that's fine. They'll do the top part here, which is an attack 3, and whenever you have this kind of diagram, as I've used it before, the gray part indicates where that character actually is, and the red parts indicate where they can do that damage to. So it's a 3 damage attack to 2 adjacent enemies that are also adjacent to that character, and they'll get 1 experience. He's going to start by attacking this archer over here. They only need to do 2 damage in order to kill it, so they flip over the card, and oh man, so it looks like some bad luck here. So this is the miss. It doesn't really matter what the numbers were, it's just a complete whiff, so they don't do any damage to the archer over there, but hopefully they have better luck over here. They're doing 3 damage to this guard. They flip that over, and oh nice. Okay, well, that is 2 damage, that's 5 damage total. Unfortunately, the guards actually have 6 life, and it looks like that guard has not been hit quite yet, so it will also survive, but that was a very good attack. It looks like that is guard number 4, so we'll put the 5 damage right there. And we see this leaping blow gets them 1 experience, so they go from 1 up to 2. All of us heroes have now activated, and we now move on to the guard at 55. We see they move at -1. There is only 1 guard right now, and they're already adjacent to people, so they don't need to move at all. Their attack is a 0, and we see that this is the basic guard, so it's a 2 damage attack. And since he's adjacent to 2 of them, we are effectively tied for proximity, and since we went before Ikariam, that means that we are attacked instead of Ikariam, which would have been really nice because he has a shield going. So either way, we're going to draw the top card from the deck, and we see that it's 2. Oh man, 2 times 2. This is not good at all. Okay, that is going to be 4 damage to us right now, which brings me from 6 all the way down to 2. Now, it's unfortunate that we did not use this leather armor. You have to use this before you actually reveal the cards from the top. And it says that when attacked, the attacker gains disadvantage on the next attack. And this refreshes every time you actually do a long rest. But again, we aren't sure if we're actually going to be doing any long rests because we have this scrambler battle quest where we only take short rests. So we might only use the leather armor once, and I think we will very likely use it next time we are attacked because we are so low on our life. Lastly, we see that the guard is going to strengthen themselves, so if they are able to activate on the next turn, they will actually draw 2 cards and pick the better one. So we definitely want to try and kill off this guard before they actually activate. Lastly, we have the archer activating at 68 initiative. We see that they are doing attack +1, and they are an elite archer, so they're actually doing 4 damage with this attack at range +1. And unfortunately for us, we are once again tied for proximity with this archer. Since we went first, we are going to break that tie. Now there is a benefit here, and that is that whenever you have a ranged attack against an adjacent enemy, you actually go at a disadvantage, just like being muddled. So this means that the archer is going to be drawing 2 cards and picking the worst one, but even so, we really need that to happen because we only have the 2 life left before we potentially become exhausted. There are some ways to get around that, and I'm sure we'll visit those when we get to them, and it will definitely happen at some point in this playthrough. So the archer draws the top card from the deck. It is a 0, which means they are still doing 4 damage to us, and the second card is, oh, nice. All right, this is the miss. Looks like this is a streaky turn for the monsters. They hit us with a 2x, and then they also whiff. This was pretty important for us, actually. So we take no damage, and we hang out at 2 life, and we're pretty lucky. The round is now over, so any players with this little recycle symbol need to shuffle up those modifier decks and action decks. So that is going to be this one right here, as well as the archer's deck. And the monster attack modifier deck, they hit both of these in a round, and it is important to note, as you saw, that you only do these at the end of the round, so if you pull out that critical hit or critical miss, then it's only going to apply to one of the attacks in that round. You're not going to have it happen multiple times within a given one. It's once again time for us to start planning out our turn, and we have very few options now. We have 3 cards, and we're going to be picking 2 of these. And, well, I think right off the bat, we need to do this heal for 3. We see it says self, which means, well, it only heals us, but I think that's important considering we are at 2 life right now, which is definitely quite scary. I think it's also important that we do this heal as soon as possible, so I think this turn pretty much just does itself. We're going to pick these two things. Maybe we'll do a pull action, or maybe we'll just run away with the move part of the bottom portion over here. And when we talk with our opponents, well, Tattletale mentions they only have 2 cards, and they're going to be going quite slow and not doing much of interest. Maybe they're going to punch an enemy, maybe not. It depends on if anything's even alive at this point. And finally, Ikariam mentions they've got another area of attack. They're hoping to hit both of these, and they're going to go relatively quickly as well. So we are going to lock in these 2 cards. We're going to go at initiative 12. And now that both of our companions have locked in their initiatives as well, we can reveal for the enemies. We see the guard here is going at a relatively average pace. Oh, it's a pretty boring turn for them. Move at +0 and attack at +0. And the archer over here is moving nice and slow as well. In fact, it attacks at less damage than normal, but it does target 2 different things, but hopefully the archer is dead before it can actually fire at 2 of us. We can now reveal our initiatives. We are going at 12. Looks like Tattersail is going at 70, and Ikariam is going at 18. When we look at the other options that our teammates are going to be doing, we see that indeed the Brute is hitting potentially 3 different spots, although there are only 2 enemies out there, and we are the first act. So I think we're going to go ahead and definitely do our self-heal for 3. And that brings us back up to 5. With our other card, we have this ability to pull 2 at a range of 3. It's our Smoke Bomb, but you can only pull when it's going to bring something closer to you than it already is. And if you look out here, you'll notice that they're already both adjacent to us. So we're just going to use the bottom part of this card to move 2. And I figure let's just go ahead and go 1, 2, and grab this money at the end of our turn. Next up, we have Ikariam the Brute over here, and they have a heal of 2 in range 1 down the bottom. It's actually going to generate some earth magic, which is the first time we're going to generate any in this game so far. And at range 1, they can only heal themselves or Tattersail, but Tattersail hasn't been hit at all, so they're just going to heal themselves for 2. Which means they've finally broken out of the cycle of 6 to 3, 6 to 3, and they've jumped back up to 8. We can see with this heal that the room has now been infused with earth energy. And so we can take this token right here and move it all the way up to the strong column. Now technically this happens at the end of Ikariam's turn because they're not actually allowed to use this token on their specific turn in this round. However, in this round, another one of, well, the companions, our companions, or potentially even our enemies could consume this. Next up, we have this Sweeping Blow. We see that it's a relatively low damage attack at 2, but it's going to hit 3 different targets that are adjacent to each other and adjacent to the character itself. So Ikariam is here. He's going to hit both of these. It takes 2 damage to kill the archer and only 1 damage to kill this guard, so hopefully he can kill both of them. Let's go ahead and start with the archer. He turns over the top card from their modifier deck, and we see that it's +0, and that's awesome, actually, because that means we do the 2 damage over to the archer, which actually kills the archer, removing them from the board, and adding the second coin to the spot. In fact, I just noticed that technically Ikariam should have looted this. This coin was underneath them a turn or 2 ago. Next up, he swings at this bandit here, and they draw another 0. Awesome. So that is 2 more damage, but it only took 1 damage to actually kill this bandit, which is really great because they were going to be strengthened, and they were going to do more damage than normal on this round. With that, this bandit is dead, and in fact, we've cleared out all of the enemies from the starting room. This means that we can take both of these placards away and get rid of the attack decks. Neither of the characters were able to attack because we killed them off first, which is really quite nice. So this just leaves our Spellweaver friend left over, going at initiative 70. They have quite a bit of text on the cards here. We see that they could recover all of their lost cards. And as of this moment, nobody's actually lost any cards yet, but that'll happen very soon. So there's no reason to do this yet. And then over here we have an attack 3 at range 4 that can hit a bunch of targets and get a bunch of experience, but it destroys the top, and there's actually nothing to attack anyway. So the bottoms of both of these are move 4 and move 4, so they figure they'll just move 4. They could move a little bit less. They can move 1 and take 2 of these coins, or 2 to take those 2 coins over there, but they figure tempo is probably good. They're going to go ahead and they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. With that, the round is coming to a close, and for the first time, we have to do some upkeep on our spell board over here. We move every single token once to the left if possible, so this green one goes down to here. It's now in waning, but it's just as strong as when it's in the strong. You can still consume it for the same ability. It just shows that it's about to go away. So hopefully next turn is one where some people can use it, although odds are looking good that it won't actually happen. We've once again reached the part where we need to discuss what we're going to do with this specific turn, and we straight up announced that we are going to do a short rest because, well, we need to do some sort of rest because we only have this 1 card in our hand, and you always have to play 2 cards in order to fully evaluate an action. when you do the rest is when you pull up your discarded cards, although we do have this one other option available to us with the Minor Stamina Potion. This says that during our turn we can recover up to 2 of our discarded cards, but this is a once per scenario effect, and I think there's likely going to be a time later on in the scenario where we really want to play a card, do a really cool thing with it, and then pull it right back up and play it 2 turns in a row with this card. So we are announcing that we're doing a short rest, which kind of takes our companions off guard, because if we took a long rest, we'd be able to heal 2 of our health. But you know what? We have this secret battle goal of making sure that we are scrambling constantly. We're only taking short rests. We can't tell them why we're doing this, but that's just what we announce. During all this, Akarian mentions that they only have these 2 cards. They're going to be moving pretty slow, but they're just going to make their way towards the door. And lastly, Tattersail says that they have 0 cards in their hand, and they're actually going to take a long rest, even though they don't need to generate the 2 health that you gain for doing long rests because they're at max health. It still gives them a little more control over the rest, and you'll see how that plays out pretty soon. Another big difference between short and long rests is that when you do a short rest, it's kind of a free action. You do it right before you actually plan out your full turn, versus a long rest where you actually lose the entire turn and you take that action at initiative 99. So when you do a short rest, you get to pull all of your cards back up, you don't heal at all, and you also don't reset any of your items, although I was maybe not thinking things through too much, and I never actually used this leather armor anyway. But again, we're hoping to only do short rests anyway, which means we'll probably only use that leather armor once in this whole scenario. And now we have these 8 cards here, and since we're doing a short rest, we need to randomly discard one of these, and it will be lost, and we won't have access to it for the rest of the game. If you do a long rest, you can pick and choose which specific card you want, but we don't have that privilege. We are just going to say that this is the one. This is the one that we're going to move out, and let's see, it's the Sinister Opportunity. It is a 3 attack and add 1 for each ally adjacent to the target. And then down here, that was really nice being able to move one of our enemies into another spot and potentially pop a trap. So we do have one option here. We could suffer 1 damage and not lose this card, and instead lose a different random card from our hand. But I think we probably don't want to push our luck too much. I think we're just going to have to say goodbye to the Sinister Opportunity. I'm glad we made good use of it when we could. The nice thing about doing a short rest, however, is that we now get to take an action on our turn, and I think we have a relatively good one here. Down here we see with this Swift Bow, we can actually move 4 and loot every single hex that we encounter with this action. So we can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, moving over there and looting this treasure chest, which has 5 gold in it, which we know because of the scenario card that we pulled at the very beginning of putting this hobble together. Technically, this cutthroat says that there are 5 gold in there, and we really like gold. We of course have to do a top action as well, and I figure in no time like the present, let's just go ahead and heal ourselves back up so that we are in a safer spot for the next room. Looking at our 2 initiative options, we have 33 and 36. Let's just go ahead and go a little bit quicker. We can now reveal the cards that we've picked. We see that we are going at initiative 33. Ikariam the Brute is going at 61, and of course Tattersail is going at 99 because they're doing a long rest. That means that we are going first. So we see that we are going to do our self-heal for 3 and then do our little run around the crate thing so we can pick up some loot. So let's do that first. We go 1, 2, 3, 4 and loot everything we pick up along the way. This treasure chest turns into a shiny 5 gold piece. And then we can heal ourselves from 5 health all the way back to 8, which is our maximum. And we're sitting at 7 gold already. Not too bad. Next, it's the Brute's turn. They decide they're just going to move 3, they don't have to worry about pushing any adjacent enemies, and there's nothing to attack, so they don't even use the top part of their cards. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3, kind of setting themselves up for the next turn when we move into the next big room. Finally, at initiative 99, we have Tattersail doing their long rest. They would, of course, heal up 2 health if they had any to heal, but they are maxed out. They would also reset any items that were spendable, but they didn't use any of those. But the important thing is they can go through their hand of 8 cards here, I guess 7 because one's pulled out, and choose which one is lost as opposed to going with something random. They decide they're going to lose this frost armor over here, and I'm keeping this close because, again, Tattersail over here is the only one that actually has the ability to bring back lost cards. For the Brute and for us as the Scoundrel, we both lose our cards permanently in this scenario. With that, this very simple round is over. This Earth energy is going to go all the way back down to inert, and we can move into the next round, this time having more cards, although actually at this point, Ikariam has 0 cards in their hand, and they've decided they're just going to do a short rest so they can burst into the next room and see what's there. Unfortunately, this means they are not going to make use of the little heal here, but they figure it's worth it to just keep the game moving, and they're going to randomly lose, let's see here, Provoking Roar. This one was a disarming attack, and down here, this is an ability that lets them absorb some damage instead of us. Well, disarm is nice because it means the enemy does not actually do an attack, but I think they are okay with losing this. This is maybe the one that they would have lost anyway. When it comes to planning out our turn, it's a little bit difficult to figure out what's going to happen because we don't know what's going to happen when we open up that door. So the overall plan, I think, is that we're going to have Ikariam. He's going to move relatively quickly to go and open up the door, and then Tattersail and us, we're going to try and go slowly. And I think, let's see, we should do this. I think maybe we do a move 6. This is a nice card. We don't even have to lose it when we do it. And then we could do an attack for 3 with a poison and get an experience. I think it's pretty likely we'll be able to run in and find an opponent within 6, especially if we go really slowly at 60, then it's likely that any enemies in there will actually move closer, so we're much more likely to get off a nice poison attack. I think this is a nice, well-rounded way to start off this next room. Once all of us have decided what we're going to do, we can go ahead and reveal it. We see that Ikariam is going at 18. We know that we are going at 60, and finally, Tattersail over here is going to go at 70, so relatively slow overall, but Ikariam can go first. We see that they are doing a move of 3 with a push of 2 at the end, I guess just in case they find something that's nice to push. And then on the top here, we see that they've initiated this that says retaliate 2 for themselves, and they gain 1 experience every time they retaliate. So essentially, they're hoping to kind of get up close enough to an enemy that may be in that room, and they hope that they punch them because they'll punch them back for 2 damage and get them an experience. At initiative 18, we'll be starting off with Ikariam the Brute. We see that he's going to move 3 and potentially actually using these Boots of Striding to get an extra 2 movement. We'll see if it makes sense once we see what's inside this room. So he's going to use the first 2 movements to go over here and unlock this door. Now before he can do anything else, we need to reveal the next room, and in order to do that, we once again need our random dungeon decks. And it's important to note that we are currently leaving the hovel through an A exit. And that means that we need to go into an A room. This first one right here is a B room, so we cannot go into that. But here is an A, so let's take a look and see what we are now encountering. It looks like it's a crushing sewer. Inside the sewer, we have earth demons and wind demons, as well as some impassable terrain and a couple nice chests. So let's go ahead and put this tile out and populate it. Now that our crushing sewer is complete, we can look down here and see that since this is our second room, we're going to evaluate the minor penalty, and it says that we're going to muddle all of the characters. So that means all 3 of us are going to take this action, unfortunately, being a little confused. Next up, all enemies in the new room will immediately activate, but in order to do that, I think I'm going to change the screen around a little bit. Let's take a closer look at these 2 new enemy types. Over here we have the Wind Demon, and we see that both its regular and elite side have 2 shields, but very low health. Unfortunately, we're only fighting regular ones. We see that it's also ranged, and it does 2 damage with its regular attack. On this turn, we can reveal the card and see that it is going to be moving at the 21 initiative. It'll move at its regular rate, it's going to attack at its regular rate. It is also going to pull a character, and it's going to initiate some wind energy into the room. Next, we have the Earth Demons, and we see that, well, we do have a regular and an elite one. They just have lots of health and no specific abilities yet. They move very slowly, but they hit quite hard at 3 and 4. And this turn, let's see, they move at 40 initiative, and, oh, this is interesting. So they don't actually move or attack this turn. They're just going to heal themselves for 3, and if there had been any earth energy in the room, they would have immobilized all enemies within range of 3 of them. So they're not actually going to do anything this turn because we haven't done any damage to them just yet, and it probably makes sense to not try and do damage before initiative 40 because, well, they just heal it right back up again. At this point, Ikariam can complete their turn. They've only done 2 out of their 3 available movements, so they can do their last movement going here. They do have the ability to use their Boots of Striding, which would add 2 to their overall movement. But you'll notice that their other option over here was the Retaliate on themselves. It would do a lot of damage if they were able to punch something that came up and hit them, but unfortunately, these Wind Demons are ranged. And if it used those 2 extra movement to go over here, the Wind Demons will move at 3 movement this current turn, so it would be able to go 1, 2, 3, get out of range, which it's going to want to do anyway, so that it's not shooting at a disadvantage, and that means there's no way to guarantee that he'd get one of these Retaliates off. And I think, well, it's likely he's going to get hit 3 times already, but it just doesn't make sense, I think, to use the boots when they don't actually do anything good for us. I suppose the other option is if we did use the boots, we could get next to this wind demon and do a regular 2 attack at it, but unfortunately, he is muddled already. And this wind demon has 2 shields, so we need to do 3 damage no matter what at +1. It's just very unlikely for all these things to come into play, and I think that it puts them in a little bit more harm's way by going there. I'd rather have all these enemies come closer because it looks like Tattersail is going to do a rather large multi-targeted attack, and he wants that to go off as well as possible. This completes his turn. He didn't do any attacks, but fortunately, this muddle goes away at the end of his turn anyway, so we'll have to deal with that on the next round. Since both us and Tattersail decided to go nice and slow with our activations, the next one is going to be the Wind Demon over here. So we see that there are 3 of them. We're going to activate them in order. This one right here is number 1, and it was random the way I put the actual pieces out. We see that it has a movement of +0, but its base movement over here is 3. It also has a range of 3 for its attack, and right now it's 1, 2, 3, 4 away from Icarium. So that means it's going to move once up here, and then it's going to do a regular attack at +0. We see that that is going to be a 2 damage attack. And hopefully this isn't too bad. We pull the top card, and okay, cool, it's +0. So that is just 2 damage over to us. Funnily enough, that brings Icarium back to 6 health, which appears to be his stable point throughout most of this game so far. Next up, we see that this Wind Demon is going to pull the target once. So that means he's actually going to get pulled forward, which is not great, because it means he's likely going to get hit by the 3rd Wind Demon, but that's how that plays out. And lastly, the wind is going to get infused in the room. Next up, we have Wind Demon number 4 over here, who's once again going to attack Icarium. It's a level 2 attack. We see that it's, oh nice, it is actually a complete miss, which means that he's also not going to be pulling Icarium closer either. Lastly, we have Wind Demon number 6, which can move 1, 2, 3 spots, and now is unfortunately within 1, 2, 3 range of Icarium, which is exactly their range. So once again, it is a 2 damage attack, and it's +0. Well, that's not too bad. That was only 4 damage overall. And this brings them all the way down to 4. Next up, we have the Earth Demons, which activate at 40, but fortunately for us, well, their heal does nothing because they're both at full health, and there is no Earth magic, so no one is going to be immobilized. So effectively, they just don't really do anything this turn, and we can now move over to us at initiative level 60. We're going to go ahead and start with our move 6, although actually we only need to move 5, because we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we are now in range and able to hit this Wind Demon right here, and we're going to do that with our Venom Shiv right here. So that's an attack of 3 with a poison element, and it will get us an experience. Of course, they do have 2 shield, which is unfortunate, but landing 1 poison onto that Wind Demon is going to make it easier for all of us to get damage through, because again, poison effectively negates shields at a 1-to-1 rate. Unfortunately for us, we are still muddled because we just entered the sewer, so we have to draw 2 cards and use the worst one. Man, okay, so -1, that means we're actually doing a 2 damage attack. They have 2 shields, which means that we don't actually do any damage at all, but fortunately, we are able to land a poison and get an experience. That gets us up to 4, and it looks like it was Wind Demon number 1 that got poisoned. Lastly, we have our Spellweaver going at initiative 70, and they're hoping to do something rather big this turn. It's unfortunate that they're muddled, but they still think they can do some pretty big stuff. They're going to start by moving 4, and this is actually a jump, which means they could get over enemies or that kind of thing, but they don't realistically need to in this instance. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, and actually stop right there, because they're now going to cast this Impaling Eruption. Now, if you look at this, it says it has range 4, attack 3, and additionally, you target all enemies on the path to your primary target. They get 1 experience for each targeted enemy. This makes Earth Essence into the room, but this is a one-time use card. It's going to be lost after they spend it. Looking at the board right now, they are 1, 2, 3, 4 away from this Earth Demon right here. They can trace a path through all of these, which means they get to attack all of them, get 4 experience, and try to do some very real damage. Looking down at their player area, we see that they do have Crackling Air going, and it gives them +1 attack to their next 4 attacks, which they are about to do 4 attacks right now. Unfortunately, this bonus for Consuming Wind to make it +2 attacks is only when you play this card and not when you actually consume the charges. So that's not going to come into effect, but this is an attack of +3, but that means it's going to be a 4 attack for all of these. And you know what? Tattersail decides they are going to consume this minor power potion now. It says that during your attack, you can add +1 attack to your entire attack action. So that's 1 more to all 4 of these attacks, and that means that they are now doing 4 5 damage attacks. They are unfortunately muddled, so they can go ahead and start, and they're just going to do it in a line with those 3 Wind Demons and then the Earth Demon. So the first one, they draw 2 cards, and we see that it is a 0 and a -1. So 5 - 1 is going to be 4 damage. We see that this is Wind Demon number 4, so they'll put 2 damage down onto that spot because 2 are of course eaten by the shields. And this of course used 1 charge on their Crackling Air. Next up, they're going to attack Wind Demon number 1, which is already poisoned, which means technically this is a 6 damage attack. And, okay, well, being muddled is really unfortunate. They reduce 1 from that. That means it is a 5 damage attack. And they get to move this down, which is going to give them an experience, which is their first of the game, but they're getting quite a few this turn. 5 damage minus 2 for the shields on Wind Demon number 1 means they take 3 damage, which means they are actually killed. So that's definitely already been quite effective for us. Next up, they go after Wind Demon number 6. This uses yet another charge of their Crackling Air. They draw 2 cards. They really hope for nothing too bad here. And yeah, nice. Okay, +0, +0. Well, the worst of those is 0, which means they are doing a 5 damage attack. 5 minus 2 for the shields is 3 health, which once again kills another Wind Demon. This has been a monster turn for Tattersail. Lastly, we have the primary target of this spell, which is Earth Demon number 1, which is elite, which means it has 13 health. They pull the last 2 cards for this effect, and it's a -2. Alright, so that's 5 minus 2, or 3 damage over to that Earth Demon. Only 10 more damage to go before we can kill that first guy. They don't have any shields, but wow, 13 is a gigantic amount of HP, especially if they potentially heal themselves. We definitely don't want to see that one again soon. That last attack consumed the final charge of the Crackling Air. They used all of it in 1 turn, which generates them another experience, which brings them to 2. And now this card is lost over here, and since they attacked 4 different things with that Impaling Eruption spell, which is also lost, they're going to generate 4 experience. So right there, they jump right up to 6. That is 6 experience in 1 turn, and they have more than the rest of us have accrued throughout the entire game at this point. The last thing for us to do is to put some Earth energy into the room. And this is a little scary because the Earth Demons can consume Earth magic power in order to do bad things to us. So hopefully we can find a way to maybe use it before the demons do. And with that, this round is now over, so we are going to move both of these essences down, and then we're going to have to shuffle in all of these cards that have this recycle symbol. It's time again for us to discuss what we're going to do on this round, and right from the get-go, Icarium the Brute mentioned that they are just going to take care of the Wind Demon. They have something that can deal with the shield, so we just don't need to worry about the Wind Demon at all. Looking at these other 2, Tattersail mentions they want to actually summon an ally who can do some extra damage, and they think they're going to go really slow to potentially also try and do some damage to one of these 2 Earth Demons, depending on, again, how slow they move. It doesn't appear that they are the fastest acting enemies out there. They are big lumbering pieces of Earth. And finally, we have these 3 options in front of us. We have this one right here, which is a 3 damage attack, and it's +2 damage and an experience if it's adjacent to any allies. This one is a move and an attack, but it's not very powerful attack of 2. And lastly, we have this Smoke Bomb over here, which is a one-time use type of consumable, which would make us invisible for a turn, and then on the next attack, while we are invisible, we would double the value of that attack. And the thing about being invisible is it only lasts 1 turn, so if we did this, we would be essentially saying we're going to do a big attack on the next turn, and I think that is a pretty cool idea, especially if we have this flanking strike in our hand. We can communicate with our companions that maybe Icarium needs to get right up next to one of these Earth Demons, and we could potentially just kill it, I think, if we were able to do a double attack on a nice pull from our deck. When you add in 3 plus potential 2, also if this thing is not next to any of its opponents, then we're going to get an additional 2 attacks, so this could be a really gigantic turn that I think will be fun to set ourselves up for. So we'll use these 2 right here, and I don't see any particular reason to go slow, so we'll go fast, and we'll just use the bottom here to just move ourselves into a better position to try and do that massive attack on our next turn. Now that all 3 of us have locked in our actions, we can see what the demons are going to do. There's only 1 more Wind Demon left. We were able to do a bunch of damage in that last turn. That was awesome. And we see that, it is going to move really fast. At 9, it's not going to attack very hard. It's going to heal itself, and if there is some wind energy available, it will consume it and turn invisible. So we wouldn't even be able to attack it this turn. This could be a problem for us. And let's see what the Earth Demon does. It is moving at 83, incredibly slowly. It moves even slower when you see its -1 movement, which is kind of funny considering the regular Earth Demon only has a movement of 1 anyway. So this one isn't going to move at all on this turn. It hurts quite a bit when it attacks this turn, and it's going to generate some Earth energy. Let's go ahead and flip over our cards and see what we did. We're going at 12. Icarium's going at 15, and let's see, Tattersail is going at 91. So that means that unfortunately this Wind Demon is actually going to beat out Icarium, and it will go invisible before he can kill him. You'll notice that he had a Pierce 2 attack over here, which gets through 2 levels of shields. So it would be very easy for them to get through the shields and kill off that Wind Demon if it wasn't invisible. But let's go ahead and see exactly how that works now. First things first, Wind Demon number 4 is going to do an attack. We are all equidistant away, but we, as Absolar, have the quickest initiative, so they're actually going to attack us. It is at -1, so it's only a 1 value attack at the moment, so hopefully this won't hurt too bad, and we see that, okay, it's a complete whiff, essentially. I mean, technically, it's a successful 0 damage attack, but that's not too bad for us. Unfortunately, now, it will heal itself for 1, and these are hard-earned damage we put on here by getting through that shield. And lastly, they are going to consume the air essence that has been charged up in the room, which they actually generated on the last turn, so nice little combo there, Wind Demon, and this will make them invisible. When anything is invisible, it is effectively a impassable piece of terrain for all of its enemies, which means, of course, it is not attackable, but you cannot actually go onto that spot because, well, there's an invisible Wind Demon there. Next up in initiative, we get to go. We are going at initiative 12, and let's go ahead and just do the plan that we already had. We are going to initiate this smoke bomb right here. This goes down in front of us. This makes us invisible for the turn. We can put our little token down to show that next time we do an attack while invisible, we'll do double damage, so we really got to make sure that happens next turn. And lastly, we put a little bit of night magic into the room. And now we can evaluate the bottom part of our card, which is just going to be 2 movement. So now I can show you something kind of interesting and new, and that is that these piles of rubble are not impassable terrain. In fact, they're just difficult terrain, which means it costs an extra action to move into those spots. So we can totally do this, and we are invisible, and we're not going to be blocking any nice spots for our companions here. It's now the Brute's turn, and they are really unhappy. They had this awesome turn set up so that they would move forward and destroy this Wind Demon, so we wouldn't have to worry about it anymore by using the Pierce 2 on this card. Now they're left trying to figure out what they can do with these actions now that things have changed since it is now invisible. In fact, there are 2 invisible characters on the board right now. So they essentially have 2 options. The first is a really big turn. They could use the bottom part here to move 4. It would be a jumping move, which would get them next to this Elite Earth Demon right here, and then they could use the top part of this card, which says they could do a 4 value attack that would also stun the target and get them 2 experience. And when a target is stunned, they just don't take their turn. Right now, this Earth Demon is punching really hard. It does a 5 damage attack this turn if it's able to try and do that. So a stun would be a nice way to stop them from actually fighting back. The issue is that that would consume both of these cards because the top and bottom have this little X on the white card icon. And, well, the Brute player only starts the game with 10 cards total, so losing 10 cards right now feels like a lot, considering this is only the second out of 3 rooms. That third room is going to have a major penalty. We don't even know what that's going to be, so it probably doesn't make sense to just throw away these cards right now, especially considering the bottom part of this action, it gives you an attack of 2 on all targets you move through when you do this jump. And right now, they wouldn't actually be able to pull that off at all since this is invisible over here. So they're just going to do a boring turn. They're going to do the bottom part of one of these to just move once, and they're just going to get closer to the Wind Demon so that maybe they can just whack it regular style next turn and have enough to kill it. Next up, the Earth Demons activate at 83 initiative. We see they are moving at -1 this turn, and as I mentioned, that means this one doesn't move at all because its base movement is 1. The base movement of the Elite Earth Demons is 2, so it will move 1 closer, and it would now do a 5 damage attack, but there's actually nothing it can hit because we are currently just a invisible little lump on this pile of rubble right here. So the only other thing that really happens is that the Earth energy is once again infused into the room, which pushes it back into the strong column. Lastly, we have Tattersail, our Spellweaver, going at initiative 91, and they're going to open off by doing this Mana Bolt right here. We see that it is a 2 value attack at range 3, but they can consume any type of magic from the room to add 1 to the attack value, and they'll get an experience. Well, right now, there is some earth magic in the air, so they will consume that down, and this is now a 3 damage, 3 range attack that got them an XP. Their target has to be this Elite Earth Demon, since it's 1, 2, 3 spaces away. And let's see, their 3 damage attack is now modified by this card, and it's, okay, a 3 damage attack. With that, the Elite Earth Demon only has 7 damage more to go until it dies. For her bottom action, Tattersail decided to do this Aid from the Ether card, and we see this is the first summon of the game. They are going to summon a Mystic Ally, which has 2 health, it does 3 damage at a range of 2, and moves 2. This is going to generate them 2 experience, and this card is just going to hang out for as long as this Mystic Ally is alive. Summoned creatures must always come into an adjacent spot to where the summoner was. So this will go down right here, and we see that this is the purple 1. And we can track this to know that that is our Mystic Ally, but putting this smaller purple 1 down on our player board, this helps in case there are multiple summons running around the map at that time. So let's now give them the 2 experience, which jumps them up to 9. With that, Tattersail's turn is done, and this summon does not actually go because the way summons work is they always activate immediately before the initiative value of whoever summoned and controlled it. So that means on the next turn, this will go right before Tattersail, and it can move and hopefully get off a 3 damage attack a couple times before it is killed off by some enemies. We're definitely going to try and keep it a little bit to the back and protect it. With that, the round is over. There are no magic tokens to push down, and there's actually nothing to shuffle up, so we can move right into the next round. It's now time for us to start discussing our strategy for this turn, and we have this really pesky wind demon that is invisible until the end of its turn, but it is going to attack us, but there's really nothing we can do about it. So we're starting to look towards these 2 earth demons, and I tell everybody that I have this plan. I'm going to be able to come out of hiding, and I'm going to do a ton of damage, specifically at this 1 demon, as long as somebody ends up next to it before I do that attack. So I ask, really nicely to Ikariam, please end your turn next to this Earth Demon and please go fast so that you can do it before I actually evaluate it, because I'm going to be going relatively fast as well. This works out well, and Ikariam says he actually has a pretty decent flexible turn. He might be able to, he has 2 different good options, and he'll play it out the way we see the cards go, because one way might be much better than the other. And then for Tattersail over here, they are just going to, well, they only have these 2 cards, and considering how low on health Ikariam is, they say they're actually going to be doing a rather sizable heal on him, and hoping to maybe do some damage with their summon if that ends up being necessary. As far as we are concerned, at the moment, we still only have this 1 card, and I think this is an okay time for us to finally consume our minor stamina potion. This lets us pull 2 cards back from our discard pile, and that's a once per scenario effect. So we can look through all the cards in our discard pile. We don't have that many cards. We've started to lose a couple of them, and I think what we want to do is grab these 2 right here. This one has a self-heal as a potential. Also down here, you can potentially move some and then poison enemies, which is a really nice way of chipping through the large amount of health that some of these guys have. And then this one over here, well, you could do a poisonous attack. As far as you can tell, I mean, I just really like the poison mechanic. It works really well, so let's go ahead and grab these. So now the question is, which of these 3 cards do we play? We know for sure we're playing this flanking strike to get that really massive attack off, but it's crazy fast at 4 initiative. So really the question is, do we want to go at 33 or 60? We know we need to be slower than Ikariam, and Ikariam said he's going relatively fast, but we're not sure if relatively fast is more or less than 33. If we did 33, we could potentially poison this giant before we actually hit him, but I think we want to hedge our bets. We want to make sure that, I mean, it would be such a bummer if Ikariam played like initiative 34 and just all of our plans just fell apart. So let's go ahead and go on initiative 60 to really make sure that we can pull this off. All right, now that we've all picked our cards, we can show our various initiatives. We went at 60, and we see that the Brute went at 27. Oh man, 33 would have been fast enough, but that's just the way we had to play that one to make sure it would work out. And then Tattersail's going at 21. Now let's see what this pesky invisible wind demon's gonna do. Ooh, okay. Well, let's see here. It will move at +0 and attack at +0. I'm pretty sure this is just a typo. Those are supposed to have pluses on them. And it's gonna do an area of effect attack. Fortunately, there is no wind in the air, or else it would do an even bigger area attack, and it's going to do that at 37 initiative. And then over here we have the Earth Demon, and okay, this is a pretty regular turn for it. It's going to move at +0, attack at +0, and just make some more Earth energy in the air. Hopefully we can deal with them before they can consume that Earth energy and do some pretty nasty stuff to us. Well, the first thing that's going to happen is Tattersail is going to activate, but before they even do any of their actions, their summon is going to activate because it always goes right before them. So it has a movement rate of 2, but they don't want to get it too close to the fray. They're going to move it once over here so that it is now within range of 2 of this Elite Earth Demon, and it's just going to attack it. And if you remember, it has a base attack over here of 3. So they are going to do a 3 damage attack over there. This gets pulled from the Spellweaver's deck, so we see that it is going to be a 3 damage attack. It's now taken 9 total and only needs 4 more to kill, so our mega turn to do a bunch of damage to it is starting to look a little less important. Now Tattersail herself can go and, well, they have a couple options. They could move forward a little bit and then do a ranged attack, but it would be a pretty poor ranged attack because it would be at close quarters, so they'd be at a disadvantage. They'd have to draw 2 cards and pick the worst one. So they're just going to go with their regular plan. They're going to heal up Ikariam for 4. This is going to destroy the card and make some sun energy that's going to go into the air. And with this card here, they're really not sure if they're going to do anything with it, to be honest. The top part of this is range 2 to do a 3 damage attack, and this Wind Demon is still invisible. I guess, realistically, they're just going to sit there and not use the other card at all. This heal is pretty big. It brings Ikariam back up to 8. And the room gets infused with some sun energy. Maybe Tattersail will be able to consume that into an extra attack point here or there. It's now Ikariam's turn, and they can do a couple different things. They have their only ranged attack here, which is a range of 3, attack of 3, and it gets them an experience point, and they can just do that right now. It only takes 4 damage to actually kill off this elite Earth Demon right here, and, well, at only 4 damage, that seems like a huge waste for this mega 2x combo turn that I've been setting up for a couple turns. It'd be great if we could pull that off on this demon over here, which has its full 9 health. But we don't know if that's going to actually happen yet. So what we discussed back and forth, and we decided we're going to all hedge our bets. We'll have Ikariam shoot this one first, and if this one dies, then he'll be able to potentially do a move for 3 plus 2 from his Boots of Striding over here to actually get next to that one, and we can maybe pull off that crazy combo over there. Now, this is all contingent on whether or not they get a +1 or the 2x, I suppose, with this spare dagger, so let's hope for the best. Right now, the Brute's discard pile is just a couple of zeros, so odds are not terrible for us, and yes, all right, we got it. That's the +1. That means they're actually doing 4 damage, and that is just enough to kill that demon. So we can go ahead and put a coin down in its place and remove all of this damage, so now we just have to worry about that other full health regular demon over there, and I guess eventually smack down this Wind Demon once it stops being invisible. And this spare dagger, of course, also gave them 1 XP, so he's at 3. It was looking good earlier, but now compared to Tattersail with 9, that's just not a ton of experience that he's been able to generate so far this game. Fortunately for us, this has now opened up our combo. We can do the move 3 plus 2 from the Boots of Striding, which he patiently did not use until the right moment, and wow, this is definitely the right moment. This lets him run 5 spaces, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But before we get to do a bunch of cool stuff at initiative level 60, we have to do this pesky Wind Demon's turn first. We see it's going at 37, and it's doing a move of +0 and attack of +0, but it's doing it in this weird kind of shape. So we look around and we see that, well, we are 2 away, so is the summon, and so actually is Tattersail, which unfortunately means that we go to the initiative tie, which gives it to Tattersail, but the summon actually goes first. So the summon is going to be the focus of the attack, and if you look at the area of effect, it's actually these 2 spots and this one. So fortunately for us, it's not going to hit multiple characters, but at this point, we're really hoping that this summon survives because it's really handy to have around. This is a base 2 attack, and it is -1. Sweet. That means it is just a 1 damage attack. And as you can see over here, the summoned Mystic ally has 2 health, so he just barely is surviving. The Wind Demon's turn is over, which means it is no longer invisible, which means technically on our turn, we could move over here and try to kill this Wind Demon, but no, we've been planning this, we've been setting this up way too long, we're currently invisible. Let's go ahead and do this, let's see, this one down here. So we'll do a move of 5, which lets us go 1, 2, and then that costs 3 and 4, so we're now adjacent to this Earth Demon. And with this flanking strike, we can start to tick off some of the parts to our combo. The first one is we are currently invisible, so this is the next attack. While invisible, we can remove this. It's going to get us 2 experience for doing that, and it's going to double the value of the attack. And then over here, that Earth Demon is still by itself, so we can move this over. That's going to generate us 1 more experience as well, in addition to 2 more attack. So right now we're looking at 3 attack plus 2, so that's 4, 5. And then right now the Brute is next to that Earth Demon, so that's another 2 for being adjacent right here. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're going to multiply that by 2. So we are going to potentially land a 14 damage hit, which hopefully just one-shots this demon. Before we get ahead of ourselves, though, we have to draw this card, and if it is the miss, then oh my gosh, that will be so painful because we put so much stuff into this attack, and it's a -1. Okay, so that means we are at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -1 is 6, times 2, that is still 12 damage that we're doing right now. This is more than enough to just one-shot this demon, which had a overall health total of 9. It really never did anything. It just kind of hung out in the corner by himself and then died. Poor guy. Lastly, we need to gather ourselves some experience. We got 2 for using this smoke bomb right here, which is now actually lost to us. We don't have access to that for the rest of the game. We got 1 for this tick over here and 1 for that tick over there. This is discarded, which means that was 4 experience right there, bringing us from 4 all the way to 8. We've almost caught up to Tattersail. With this, we are done with the round because we don't actually activate these Earth Demons because none of them exist anymore. So I can kind of pull this away, and we can go ahead and push the Sun Magic down a little bit and move into the next round. It's time again for us to discuss our plans for this turn. We've almost cleared out this hall. There's a couple nice treasure chests over here, but we do need to take care of this pesky wind demon right here. It has 1 damage on it, but with 2 shields, it effectively means we need to get 4 damage pushed through in essentially 1 big chunk, or even more than that in smaller chunks. The door is right here, which we could open to see the next room, but when we do that, we're going to get a major penalty. So we probably want to try and clean up this wind demon before we open the door. Hopefully we can do that this turn and crack open that door on the next turn. Now, one thing to note is that we have 1 card in our hand at the moment, and we did use our stamina potion already, so we must rest on this turn, and I think that we will again do a short rest because, well, that is what our battle goal is. But when it comes to Tattersail, they have no cards in their hand at all, so they also must do a rest, and they've decided they are going to do a short rest as well. Let's go ahead and start with us. So we are going to need to shuffle up this discard pile and lose 1 of these. Hopefully it is not a key part of the system that we've been doing here, and you know what? We've never really used this card. The idea of moving and attacking for 1 action is nice, but it never really worked, especially considering the attack is low value. So let's go ahead and continue to lose that one, and the rest of these are going to come back into our hand. Although I tell you right now, even though things are looking kind of good for us, we are really running out of steam. Once we run out of enough cards to be able to play 2 down, then we're just going to become exhausted and are out of the game. Obviously, we could still win if our friends are able to pull up the slack and finish out the scenario, but right now we are getting pretty darn tired. We don't have that many turns left. Now we come over to Tattersail, who also has to do this. They only have 3 cards in their discard pile, and the thing is that one of them is absolutely crucial to them, because it looks like they're almost out, but one of these pulls back all of their lost cards. So they're going to lose this one. And yep, that is the one. They need to make sure that they don't lose this one, because it recovers all of their lost cards. So they're going to go ahead and take 1 damage, so that they can lose 1 of the other 2 that they have here. Just kind of stick that in there. And they're going to lose this one right here. And realistically, it doesn't matter, because they're about to pull it all back up. So they now have this hand of cards, and well, they are going to definitely be evaluating that to pull the cards up. That is their plan for this turn. So let's now look at what our options are, and we start discussing them with Arcarium, because, well, realistically, we don't have that much time to really just sit around and not open this door. We probably should actually open it this turn. So we tell them that we are going to try to kill off this wind demon on this turn. We're going to try and move 3 spots over here. By moving adjacent to this wind demon, we'll poison it, and then we'll try to smack it really hard, and hopefully that will be able to get over the shields and actually kill it. So that'll be our plan. We're going to tell them we're going to do it very, very fast, and then Icarium says that they're going to set up a situation so that if we kind of miss, they can go back there and hopefully actually finish it off, and if not, then they're going to go over here, open the door, and we'll see what the 3rd and final room looks like. Now that all 3 of us have chosen, we can flip over and see the initiatives. We are going crazy fast at 4. The Brute is going to go at 35, and the Spellweaver over here is going to go at 7. So we're going very fast this round, and let's see what this silly little Wind Demon is going to do on their turn. And it's moving nice and slow at 43. It's going to attack quite hard, and it would consume air to target 2 different things on this turn, but fortunately it has not actually created air, and we have not helped it out by making air ourselves. Well, we are super fast, so let's go ahead and lead things off. We're going to begin with our move of 3, which means we can go 1, 2, 3, and then down below it says that we are going to poison the 1 target adjacent enemy at this point. So by poisoning this wind demon over here, we've effectively taken away 1 of its shields, which makes it much more likely that we will kill him, and if we don't, that somebody else will on our party. So now we can do the other side of our card, and we see that this one is going to be the flanking strike again. It's a 3 damage attack. It would get 2 more attack and get us an XP if anyone was adjacent, but they aren't, and that's, I think, okay. So we're doing a 3 damage attack here against a 1 shield being. Oh, actually, I just realized we still have 1 last charge on Singled Out. Since the Wind Demon is not next to anything, we will actually consume this, which will get us an XP, and this does get us +2, so we are hitting it at 5. So this is actually a pretty good attack right here, and as long as we don't miss, and we don't. Ooh, okay, well, we overkilled it at this point. That is a 6 damage attack against a creature that only has 1 shield and only 2 health left, and that absolutely kills it. The last charge on Singled Out brings us all the way up to 9 experience, and you might be wondering what happens when you hit the top of this experience track, and that's fine. You can just get a 10 experience token and keep going along, and this is now officially lost to us, so we can no longer get that really nice advantage, but I think we did quite well with those charges. Next up we have Tattersail, our Spellweaver, but actually the summon moves first, and it has a movement of 2, So it's going to move right over here, and unfortunately, summons don't actually auto-loot things, so they're not actually going to get that money, and now Tattersail herself can take her turn, and we know for a fact that they are going to do the top part of this card, which is the Reviving Ether. It's going to recover all of their lost cards. It's going to make some night magic in the room, and this is not only lost, but it is permanently lost. This little token right here says that there's no way you can ever pull this card back, even if you had another card with a similar ability on it. For the second half of their turn, they're just going to evaluate the bottom and take 2 move actions, which will take them right here, and they do get to grab this 1 gold. Lastly, we have Ikariam, our brute, and we see his options are, well, he could do some attacks up here, which don't actually matter at the moment, but if he was to bust through the door with a movement of 6, he'd get an XP and potentially be able to get up close to something else and attack several different things. The alternate option is you could do this one down here, which is a move of 3, but as you can see, that would just open up the door. And if all they did was that, then its odds are good that this attack over here would probably not hit anything. It's possible that it would, but you know that if he's moving through 6, he would be able to get most likely up into something close that it could do some damage to. So I think they're going to evaluate that. It'll destroy this card, but Ikariam actually has quite a few cards compared to the rest of us, and this game is actually getting somewhat close to the end, so it's probably time to start pushing things. This means he moves 1, 2, 3, and then opens up the door. For the last time, we're going to bring out the random dungeon decks, and if you'll remember, we were in the sewer, and the exit we just went through was an A exit, so we have to go into an A level card. So let's see what we're going to fight in our third and final room, and it is a putrid cave. Looks like we have some walking corpses, and we have some ooze, and we also have some muddling damage traps. That's pretty nasty. Ooh, a 10 gold chest. That's nice. And then over here in the cave, when we look down at the penalty, we see the character who opened the door suffers 6 damage and gains stun. Oh, that's not great at all for our brute. But before I take care of that, let's go ahead and build this cave. There is our completed putrid cave, and now let's suffer the penalty. Having our brute stunned right now is actually a really bad situation for us, because not only does he not get to complete his move actions, well, I do believe he's going to get that 1 experience, bringing him up to 4, but this card is now lost after only getting 3 movement out of it, and then he doesn't get to use this one at all because he's stunned. The worst part about it is that this only goes away after you spend an entire turn under that effect. So this means that on Ikariam's next turn, he will also not do anything. So we need to do something about our friend here who's just stuck in that doorway, also took 6 damage, so he's sitting at 2 health. This is just not a great spot to be in. As always, as soon as we open a door to a room, we have to immediately draw an action card for all those characters, and they will all get to evaluate at those initiatives. Now, we see here with the ooze, we have a 94 initiative, really slow. The ooze is going to suffer 2 damage, and then you're going to summon a normal ooze with a hit point value equal to the summoned ooze's current hit point value, limited by the number of oozes specified by the maximum hit point value. Well, essentially what that means is that all 3 of these oozes are going to take 2 damage and then summon a new ooze at their new health level. Well, they all have a base level of 5 health, except for that one elite, which has a 9, so they'll be relatively low health oozes, but they do have a shield of 1, and this is looking pretty nasty for us. But while we're here, let's go ahead and reveal the living corpse. We see that it's really slow, but still faster than the oozes, and we see that all it does is it's going to move at -1, and it's going to attack at +1. But the thing about living corpses is they have a movement of 1 no matter whether they are elite or not. So we're really lucky, honestly, that we have a movement of -1. It means that they are not going to move. They normally hit really quite hard, especially with the +1, but it's now our turn to actually activate them, and they just don't move. They move at a rate of 0. So let's go over and do the oozes. We always start with the elite enemies first, so that's going to be ooze number 9. That's 2 damage over here. It's going to spawn a normal ooze number 6 adjacent to it right over here, and normally that would start with a couple less hit points, but since this is spawned off of the elite one, which has a hit point value of 9, well, that would bring it down to a 7, and the max health on the normal ones is 5, so that one just starts out normal. That one is not actually going to move, neither of them will, so we can now move on over to number 8 over here. That takes 2 damage, bringing it down to 3. It's going to summon normal ooze number 5 over here, which also has 2 damage on it already. Lastly, we have ooze number 10, which takes 2 damage, and spawns ooze number 2, which is also going to start with 2 damage. With all that craziness over, we can go into the end of round cleanup. This sun power is going to go all the way down, and we can reshuffle the ooze deck and, I don't know, see if it's going to split again on us next turn. It's now time for us to figure out how we're going to try and tackle this crazy room here as we're getting more and more tired. At this point, the Ikarim was going to have to rest anyway because he only has one card left, and the only thing you're allowed to do while you're stunned is a long rest. So he just straight up announces that he's doing a long rest that'll heal him up to 2 hit points when he gets to his turn at 99 initiative. We have no idea how all this stuff is going to evaluate before then. Before we can really start figuring out what we're going to do, Tattersail mentions they're going to drop a very large heal on Icarium as fast as they can, so that'll certainly help things out. And we only have these 3 cards in our hand. When we look at our various options, we can move quite fast, although that's not necessarily a huge requirement for us. And we do have this attack right here, which is 3 damage at a range of 4, so we can at least get kind of close in here and shoot in. The only line of sight in the game has to do with going through doorways from room to room, essentially, because walls do block line of sight. So as long as you can trace a path from any part of a hexagon to any part of the other hexagon through one of those doors, then you are fine. And I think realistically what we should do is spend these 2, keeping this one in our hand. It has a poison effect on it, which could be important based on how this turn works out for us. So let's go ahead and do these 2, and we'll just do it as fast as possible so that, who knows, maybe we can kill something off before it hits our brute. Now that we've chosen our cards, we can flip them up and show that we are going at initiative 6, Tattersail is going at 21, and let's see what the Ooze is going to do. It's going at 36, relatively fast. We notice that it's going to move at move at +1. They move very fast this turn, but they attack at -1, which is rather nice for us. And let's see what the living corpses do. They're going nice and slow at 71 initiative. They move at their regular rate, they attack really hard, and they're going to poison all adjacent enemies. This is probably going to be a pretty painful turn for us. The round is going to start with us going at 6 initiative. We're going to do a move and then a shoot for a 3 attack. And I think we should go ahead and try to take out this Ooze right here. We could also try to shoot at this living corpse, but it has 10 health. And with a 3 attack, that's not going to do a whole lot of good for us. I think it's probably better to start picking off things where we can. We can move for 6, so I figure let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll take a shot at Ooze number 5. The attack has a base value of 3, so let's see what we do. All right, 3 damage. Unfortunately, with 1 shield, 3 damage turns to 2, and that's not quite enough to actually kill off that Ooze. Next up, we have Tattersail, but before she actually gets to move, the summon is going to move, and it's going to go 1, 2 over to here, and it actually has line of sight over to this Ooze here. It's going to do a 3 damage attack. We draw from Tattersail's modifier deck, and we see that, oh wow, it's actually a 4 damage attack. That is a shame, because it only took 2 damage to actually kill him off. So we overkilled it by 2, but hey, that's still fine. We've killed one of these crazy number of Oozes off the board. And it's important to note that while we take this off, we're not actually going to put a coin down, because you only put coins down for minions that were kind of spawned by the actual scenario. And since this was summoned by another minion, it does not actually put a coin onto the board. Our Spellweaver can now do their turn. They're going to execute the heal of 4 at a range of 4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, just barely enough to get over to Icarium. And then they're going to go ahead and put the Crackling Air into effect again, which is going to give them +1 attack to the next 4 attacks. The heal brings our brute back up to 6 health, and it energizes the room with some sun magic. Next up, we're going to evaluate the Oozes at 36 initiative. We see they have a movement of +1, and their base movement for both the regular and elites is 1, so they're all going to move at 2. We always start with the elites, so that's this one over here. It can move through its friendly pal over here, and it would normally do an attack of -1, but it can't quite reach. It's not a ranged attack right now. Next up, we have Ooze number 2. It's going to move twice over here, and it's going to attack Icarium at -1. Its base attack is 1, so it only has a current attack of 1. We pull the top card from its modifier deck, and it's a +1, so that's a 2 damage attack. This brings our brute down to 4 life. Next, we have Ooze number 6, who activates, goes over here, and attacks Icarium again. This is once again a base 1 attack, and we pull the top card, and it's okay, a 1 damage attack. He is now at 3 health. Ooze number 8 now activates, but it can't get any closer, and it can't get an attack off, so it doesn't actually do anything. Ooze number 9 has activated already because that was our elite. And finally, Ooze number 10 will go 1, 2, trying to get closer to the fray. Finally, we have our 3 living corpses that are going to activate at initiative 71. They move at +0, so they're going to all move at 1. They are going to do 4 and 5 damage attacks, actually, and poison all adjacent enemies. Fortunately for us, it looks like the oozes have rushed in and actually protected us because, well, this elite living corpse is going to activate and it can't actually move one to get closer, so it does nothing. Then next up we have this one over here, which is a number 3. It's going to move one closer and it's not adjacent to anything, so it doesn't poison. And lastly, this one over here, it lands here on the treasure chest. Fortunately, it doesn't know how to loot it, and it's not going to do anything mean to us either. Lastly, we have Icarium, our brute, doing his long rest. This is going to reset the Boots of Striding, which probably is not going to make any difference. It's going to heal him 2 health, which really could make a difference. And lastly, they get to look through all of the cards in their discard pile. They have to lose one and they gain the rest back into their hand. As you can see, they still have quite a few cards available to them. Some of them are nice area of effect cards. He's decided to lose the Shield Bash, and with that, his turn is over. With that, the round is over. We can do a little bit of maintenance and move into the next one. It's time to start strategizing. That last turn was not too bad for us. Fortunately, the oozes kind of got in the way of the heavy-hitting living corpses. Before we can do anything, though, we announced that we have 1 card, so we once again have to short rest. We only have these 4 cards left in our discard pile. We're going to go ahead and shuffle these up, and honestly, the only one we've got to keep is our ranged attack, so we can keep shooting through the door at the moment. So I think we'll lose this one, and it's not our ranged attack, so I think that's going to be good enough for us. This one is lost, and at the moment, we only have 4 cards left available to us for the rest of the game. It's now time to start discussing our options, and Icarium says that he has a pretty good turn available to him where he can kind of just block the door and punch a whole bunch of things and actually not take all that much damage. Tattersail is just going to try and get closer into the fray and is going to try and do a ranged attack through the door at relatively quick speeds. Icarium's going to go quite quickly trying to get their kind of shield wall up so they can do a bunch of damage that way. And lastly, for us, I think that we just need to use our ranged attack again. For the moment, we can't really get in there to do our melee attacks. Hopefully we can maybe clear things up a little bit on this turn. So I think if we're doing our ranged attack here, then we get to do something with the bottom level. And realistically, there's not a whole lot we can do there. I guess this one is least interesting to us because it only poisons one thing. This heals ourselves, and we're doing pretty good on health. So we're going to go ahead and use this one as just our secondary card. Maybe we'll use it to move, or maybe we won't. Either way, we'll see how this one plays out, and we may as well go relatively quickly at 33. Now that all of us have decided what cards we're going to play, we can go ahead and flip them over. We see that Tattersail is going at 20, Icarium is going at 18, and we are going at 33, which seems kind of slow compared to the rest of them. But here's the X factor. Let's see what these crazy oozes are going to do this turn. They're activating relatively slowly at 66. It looks like they're moving at -1, which actually means they don't move at all. They're attacking at +1 damage, and their range is increased by 1, so they're quite painful this turn. That is not going to be great for us, but let's go ahead and see what happens with the living corpse over here. It is going at 66 as well. That's funny. Whenever you have a tie between the enemies, we could just decide which one evaluates first, and it's a pretty boring turn for the living corpses. They're just going to move at the regular rate and attack at the regular rate. It looks like our brute is going to activate first at 18, and let's see what the options are. Well, first of all, they're going to activate this warding strength. Down in the bottom, we see that on the next 6 sources of damage from attacks targeting you, you gain shield +1, and on 3 of those, every other one, they're going to gain some experience. So this is going to do a pretty good job of absorbing some of the damage that's coming in, and the other one says eye for an eye, retaliate 2 for themselves, gain 1 experience every time you retaliate this round. So this means they essentially punch everyone who hits them at melee for 2 damage this round. Unfortunately, that's just going to be these 2 here, even though they will be doing a potentially doing a ranged attack. Actually, this one might move back. Oh no, they don't move this turn. So either way, this pretty much means it's going to punch both of these oozes for 2 damage. And the nice thing about things like retaliate and traps is they don't affect shields. So shields don't reduce this number at all. It gets around shields. Shields only reduce straight up attack. So that's going to be a good amount of damage for them this round. Next up, we have Tattersail going at initiative 20. Although their summon goes first with this Mystic Ally, it has a range of 2, and it can see through this door to this ooze number 6, and I think it's going to do that. It's going to do a 3 damage attack at that ooze. We go ahead and draw from Tattersail's modifier deck, and they do +2. Wow, that's a 5 damage attack. This is ooze number 6, which currently does not have any health because it kind of spawned off of the elite ooze number 9. It has a shield of 1, so it only takes 4 damage, which means it does not quite die at this point, but it should die when it attacks Icarium. Next up, Tattersail herself can evaluate her turn. She's going to move for 4 down here, and remember this is kind of difficult terrain, so it's going to be 1-2 movement, and then they're just going to go 3, and it looks like they're probably just going to stop right there. For the top part of her action, she's going to evaluate this Frost Armor. It's a 2 damage attack at range of 3, but they can consume any type of magic to gain +1 attack and 1 experience. Well, we see there is 1 light magic going on right now, so they can consume that. It's a 3 damage attack. They're going to shoot right through the doorway at this ooze number 2. So let's go ahead and pull from the modifier deck. This deck is really big. They've gone through a whole bunch of their cards so far, and they haven't hit their critical hit or their null miss yet. If we look right here, they have, let's see, it looks like 7 cards left, so it's relatively high chance they are going to whiff or hit really big here, and it's a whiff. All right, so that's not too surprising. They are going to get to reshuffle everything at the end of their turn. It does mean that this attack does not work, and to my interpretation, with this small experience marker, they're not going to get that experience either, because this was a completely failed attack. But that means their turn is now over and we can move on. It's now time for us to evaluate our turn, and we knew that we probably weren't going to be able to evaluate this card at all. There was no way to jump in here and really do anything because the enemies have blocked it and we don't have any jump abilities with our movement. So this turn is all about this 3 damage attack at range 4, and I think what probably makes the most sense is to shoot through all the way over here and attack this ooze number 8. It has 2 damage on it already, but it's not going to get retaliated against on this current turn, and we could potentially kill this one off, but it's not going to do that much damage probably to Ikariam considering he has that shield wall up, and he's going to punch it for 2 guaranteed damage anyway. So I think let's maybe try and soften the rest of them up a little bit by shooting over here and hitting number 8. I just realized that unfortunately Tattersail also consumed 1 charge on this Crackling Air with that missed attack. So the attack has a base damage of 3. Let's go ahead and draw the top card, and it's a -1, so it's only a 2 damage attack. And unfortunately, because he has a shield, that is only 1 damage, but it's only 2 damage off from dying. It's unfortunate that it's not going to get retaliated against on this turn. With that, our turn is over, and we can now move over to the enemies. Since they are tied, we can choose between the two, and I think let's go ahead and activate the living corpses first so that they don't actually do any damage to us, because right now, they could do quite a bit of damage based off of if we retaliated and they moved in here and punched Ikariam for 4. He only has 5 health at the moment, so that could be very bad for us. So let's go ahead and start with that elite living corpse. It's going to move not at all because there's no space for it, so that's all it does on its turn. Next up, we have the number 3 here, which cannot get closer either. And lastly, number 4 moves over here, but cannot get an actual attack off. We now start evaluating all of these oozes, and we are going to begin with the gold one, of course. It has a base damage of 2, but it's doing +1 damage right now, so that is 3 damage. And of course, it is going after Ikariam, who is just blocking up this door here. So we draw from the top of the modifier deck. It is 3 + 0, or 3 damage coming in. Due to warding strength, they will absorb 1 of those with a shield, so that's only going to be 2 damage, bringing them down to 3, and unfortunately they are not able to retaliate because right now that ooze is outside of the range of our brute Ikariam here. Next up, we have normal ooze number 2, which is right over here, and it's doing a disadvantaged attack because it's ranged and it's adjacent to its target. So it's going to draw 2 cards from the top of the deck, and it's going to choose the worst one. I'd say that -1 is better for us and worse for them. So that was going to be, let's see here, a 2 damage attack +1, which is 3 - 1 is back to just 2 damage. Warding strength is going to protect another 1 of those damages from coming in, so that's just 1 damage here. That also revealed 1 experience for our brute Ikariam here, and also this now is able to hit this retaliate of 2 damage back. And since he was able to successfully do that, they will also gain Ikariam 1 experience, bringing him up to 6. The 2 damage is dealt to number 2 over here, so it's just barely not dead yet, but it is nice to get damage in around those shields. Next up, we have ooze number 6, which is also fighting at a disadvantage. It has a base attack of 2. It's going to draw 2 of these cards, pick the worst one. Ooh, okay, this is pretty good. Next up, we have normal ooze number 6, which is attacking once again at a disadvantage. So it's a value 2 attack. They draw 2 off the top of their deck. They go with the worst one. 0 is definitely worse than 1 for them, so that's going to be a 2 damage attack into Ikariam. Once again, he's going to use 1 charge on the warding strength ability and take 1 damage, which brings him down to just 1. And this is going to initiate the retaliate once more, which will do 2 damage back and get him 1 more experience, bringing him to 7. Fortunately for us, 2 damage is enough to actually kill off number 6. So even though it did some damage, it is now wiped off of the board. Next, we have ooze number 8, which is going to attack at Ikariam. It's going to draw just a single card from the top of the deck. It's not disadvantaged like its fellow oozes over there, and it's a -1 attack, so that was going to be 2 + 1 - 1. That is 2 damage coming in. The first one is going to be blocked by this warding strength, which brings them up to 8 experience, But unfortunately, Ikariam is at 1 health, and even that one extra one that got through is going to be enough to exhaust him. And once a character is exhausted, they are out for the scenario permanently. So there's one other thing we have up our sleeve. We can discard 1 card from our hand, or from Ikariam's hand that is, to the lost pile in order to absorb any amount of damage from one specific attack. They also could discard 2 cards from their discard pile into the lost pile in order to do the same thing, but currently they don't have a discard pile, so he's going to look through the cards he has in his hand and figure out which one they're going to lose. It's painful, but Overwhelming Assault is now gone. That was a 6 damage attack that would have been really great to have, but at this point he's just trying to survive. Lastly, we have Ooze number 10, which can actually hit Ikariam at a range of 1, 2, 3 because of this +1 to range on their card. So it draws 1 card from the top, and oh nice, it is the null. That is very good because we don't want Ikariam losing too many more cards from their hand. So that is a complete miss, and with that, we have evaluated everyone for this round. We can now do our end of round maintenance, making sure that all of these symbols right here get shuffled back up into their appropriate decks. At this point, things are not looking too great for our little adventuring party here. We're all getting very close to exhaustion. We only have 2 cards in our hand, so we're definitely going to be playing this one out. We figure we'll probably just play it really low, and we're going to mention this to our teammates. We're just saying we're going to do something very fast. It's probably maybe going to be running in and doing some damage or something. We want to do the best we can with these 2 cards. Tattersail mentions that they only have 1 card in their hand, so they're going to have to go ahead and do a rest. But instead of doing a random pulled short rest, they're going to do a long rest because their summon will still activate, and maybe it can do a little bit more damage and stall them out a little bit longer so they can stay away from exhaustion that last extra turn. And lastly, Ikariam says he's just going to do as much damage as possible, not terribly fast unfortunately, but just do what he can, maybe going down swinging in what could be his last turn. We can now reveal the initiatives. We see that we are going at 6. Ikariam is going at 54. The Oozes are going at 94. Oh, looks like they are doing their huge split thing again. The nice thing about it is they do suffer 2 damage before all that happens. And then the Living Corpses over here, they're moving faster than normal but do less damage. So that's probably a good thing for us. Looking at our options, I think our decision is pretty clear. We should do a big movement and then do an attack 3 with poison and getting us an experience from this Venom Shiv. And we can just move right through Ikariam, go here, and smack at this elite level Ooze over here. It is going to split, so if we do damage now, then that damage is essentially copied down through the next copy of the Ooze, so it's nice and weak. If we have any chance of surviving this, I think this is something we have to do, even though we are probably going to get punched pretty hard by this elite living corpse right here. So we move our 6 movement to just go right over here, and now we'll do the attack. We have a base damage of 3, and then we draw our modifier and see, oh nice, okay, so it's going to be a 4 damage attack. When you factor the 1 shield that it has going for it, that's going to be 3 damage total, so it is up to 5 damage. At initiative 47, the living corpses are actually faster than Ikariam is at 54, so they are going to go first. Of course, the elite one activates first. It is a movement of +1, which means it can move at 2, but it's pretty happy. It's already right next to us, unfortunately. It's going to attack us a little bit less than normal. Its base attack is 4, so we -1, and I think now is the perfect time, we've been holding onto it all game, to use this leather armor. If you look at the specifics of it, it says, when attacked, the attacker gains disadvantage on that attack. Well, we're getting hit by a really big, mean thing, so we'll force it to draw 2 cards, and then pick the worst one. Oh, nice! That's good, because this is the second one, so it's actually going to do 2 less damage than normal, so that's 4, -1, -2. That's only 1 damage we're going to take. So we go from 8 down to 7. Now it's time for the normal living corpses, and they are just so unhappy. They never have a chance to actually do any attacks. They can move twice, but there's no way to get in for either of them, so neither of them move and neither of them attack. At 54, it's now time for Ikariam to evaluate his turn. He's going to start off by doing the bottom part of Trample, which lets him move 4. This is a jump, and he gets to do a 2 damage attack to all enemies they go through. It's going to give him 2 experience, but it is also going to destroy the card. It seems like the correct path is to go 1, 2, 3, 4, going through this Ooze number 2 and both of these living corpses. So let's go ahead and evaluate that in order. We'll start with the Ooze, which is going to be a 2 -1 attack, so that's just 1 damage, which actually gets negated by the shield, but that's fine because that Ooze is going to kill itself anyway when it tries to replicate. Next up, they are attacking the elite living corpse for 2 +1. That's nice, that's 3 damage. We can see over there that this is living corpse number 2. It takes 10 damage to kill it, but 3 is a nice start. And lastly, that trample hits this regular living corpse number 3. And that's going to be 2 plus 2. Wow, that's a 4 damage attack. And it just occurred to me that this Retaliate is no longer in effect, so that should be down here in the discard pile. 4 damage on number 3 is really nice because it only takes 7 to kill these regular ones. That was more than half right there. And lastly, that trample gives him 2 experience. He was at 8, so he goes to 9, and then back to 10 by gaining this little token here. But he's not done yet. He still has this Leaping Cleave ability up here. It's going to be 2 3 damage attacks to 2 adjacent targets right next to him, getting him another experience. And he's decided he is going to go after this Elite Living Corpse and this Elite Ooze over here. He's going to evaluate these base 3 damage attacks in that order. So the first one goes to the Living Corpse, and it's, oh man, it's a miss. That is really unfortunate. The second one is going to go after that Ooze, and it's going to be a +0. Okay, well, that is at least 3 damage going in over there. We, of course, subtract 1 for the shield over there, so that's going to be 2 damage coming into Ooze number 9. Next, at initiative 94, all of the Oozes are going to do their little split thing, but first, they suffer 2 damage. So let's go ahead and do these in order. First is the Elite one, that is number 9. We see that right now it actually has 7 damage, so when it takes 2 more, that brings it to 9, which actually just straight up kills it. So fortunately for us, with that attack from Ikariam, we don't have a splitting Ooze at all. In fact, we just have a dead Ooze. That was one of the original ones though, so we'll put a coin down on the board. Next up, Ooze number 2 activates. It has 4 damage. It takes 2 more, which brings it over the threshold of 5 to kill it, so that one actually dies as well, and this one was a spawned Ooze, so we're not going to put any coins down for it. Next up, we have Ooze number 8, and we look over here, we see that it already has 3 damage on it, so it takes 2 damage, which again brings it to exactly 5, and again, it kills it off. Man, we were really lucky having this card come up. The Oozes are just wiping themselves out for us. Lastly, we have this Lonesome Ooze number 10. It only has 2 damage on it, so it takes 2 more. This does not actually kill it, so it is going to successfully split. The new one spawns right here, but fortunately it spawns at the same hit point total as the previous one, so it also just takes 1 damage to kill. So that was number 2. And we can put 4 damage tokens right down onto it. And last but not least, we have Tattersail, who's doing a long rest, but before she actually activates, the summon can move once. It figures it may as well shoot over at this Elite Living Corpse since it's already taken a fair bit of damage already. This is a 3 damage attack, so we flip over the top card, and yep, sure enough, that is 3 damage. This all goes into the Elite Living Corpse number 2, so it now has 6 damage total on it, just 4 away from death. And finally, Tattersail can evaluate her long rest. She gets 2 health and now has to discard 1 of these 3 cards to their discard pile. They only have 1 left in their current hand. After thinking about it, she has decided that Mana Bolt is now lost. With this, the round is over. We can go ahead and shuffle up the decks that need to get reset. We're once again back to figuring out how we're going to kill off everything in this cave before we all keel over with exhaustion. We have no cards in our hand right now, so we have to do a rest. I figure we may as well do a short rest. That means we are going to have to randomly discard 1 of these 4 cards. I really hope it isn't a good one. A good one being maybe something with poison. Let's see, this one, oh man, that we really don't want to lose that. In fact, I think it's worth it. We're going to take 1 damage to not lose this card and instead lose this one right here. That was a heal and also a poison. Both of those would have been good, but we have to stick with the decision we made. Ikariam only has 2 cards left in his hand, and he says he's just going to be doing a bunch of attacking on this turn relatively quickly. There's not a whole lot of intense strategizing we can even do. We look at the 3 cards in our hand and we figure, let's go ahead and use these 2 right here, maybe try and go as quickly as we can to get off a poison attack on something, maybe even number 4 since we haven't touched that one just yet. And then we can hold on to this one to do a really big mega attack with our next turn, because with only 3 cards left in hand, this is our second to last turn at a maximum. Next turn would be our last in case we actually survive this one. It is possible we get hit so hard we'll discard cards here and this will be our last turn of the game. And finally, Tattersail puts their cards down and says, don't worry, they're going to try and do a lot of damage this turn. So let's go ahead and flip over the cards and see the initiatives. We're going at 36. Tattersail, the Spellweaver, is going at 20. Ikariam is going at 27. The Oozes are going to go at 57. Nice and slow. Actually, a very boring turn for them. Just move +0, attack +0. The Living Corpses are going to go move +1. Ooh, this is interesting. They're not actually attacking this turn. They're just going to suffer a damage. I guess they are just lumbering zombie corpse things. They actually hurt themselves the longer they are alive. That's pretty great for us. First things first, Tattersail gets to activate, but before even that, it's going to be the summon that goes first. It's not going to move. It's just going to do a straight up 3 damage attack over to this Living Corpse number 4. We draw from the top of their discard pile, and we see it's only going to be a 2 damage attack. But 2 is certainly better than nothing. Now Tattersail is going to use the bottom part of this frost armor to get a move 2. They're only going to move once, and now they're going to activate their Impaling Eruption. Now, if you remember, they used this to great effect earlier on in the game. They were able to pull it back up because they can bring those lost cards back, which is a really cool ability. And so, if you remember, we have a range of 4, attack of 3, and they additionally target all enemies in the path to the primary target, gaining 1 experience for each of those. The primary target of the spell is going to be this Living Corpse number 3 over here, and the crazy thing about this spell is when you trace a path through to the enemies, you can do it in any real order you want to. You don't necessarily need to have a straight line. And since they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way out to all of these, they can actually trace this path and hit all 5 of these enemies for 3 damage attacks. And even better yet, the first 3 of these attacks are going to have +1 damage on them because of this crackling air. This is a whole lot of damage, so let's just go ahead and evaluate it right from here. This is Tattersail's modifier deck. They're going to start right here with this Living Corpse number 4. They flip over the top card. This is going to be 0, so that's 3 + 1 for crackling air, plus 0, so that's going to be 4 damage coming into number 4, which brings it up to a total of 6 damage at this point. It's actually really close to dying. Next up, they're going after Ooze number 10. This is going to be 3 + 1 for the crackling air, so 4 + 0, -1 for the shield. That's 3 damage coming in. Fortunately, only 1 damage was needed to actually kill off Ooze number 10, so that wipes it out from the board. And I believe it was one of the original Oozes, so I'll put a coin down. Now we have Ooze number 2. Once again, this is the 3rd attack, so it's still a 4 damage attack +1. Oh, that's really unfortunate, actually, because that completely overkills this Ooze. It gets wiped out. It's certainly one of the summoned ones, so we're not going to put any coins down on the board. At this point, crackling air is exhausted, so when we go after this Elite Living Corpse number 2, it's just going to be 3 + 3 -1. That's unfortunate, so that's 2 damage coming in there. And finally, we have the primary target, which is Living Corpse number 3. It is a 3 damage +1, 4 damage. Awesome! 4 damage on number 3 brings it to 8, which is actually 1 more than the amount we need to kill it. So we're going to take all of these off, and that is going to wipe out this Living Corpse, and that was an astonishingly huge turn for Tattersail. By using up the last 3 charges on this crackling air, they generated for themselves 2 more experience points, and that's going to bring them from 9 up to 11. And then, of course, this crazy Impaling Eruption gives them 1 experience for every enemy targeted. They just hit 5 different enemies, so this goes away. They go from 11 all the way to 16 experience. And we can't forget there is a little bit of Earth energy generated by this spell. So we can bump that all the way up, and in fact, there are no more Oozes, so we can go ahead and just remove this from the table. After all that carnage, it's now our Brute Icarium's turn, and let's see what he can do. Well, originally he was just going to sit tight and just try and do damage twice, that is, because they have this attack for 2 down the bottom. But instead, they're now going to use this to do a move of 2 to go right here, because that means that with this spread, they can do 2 value damage attacks on both of these last remaining living corpses. He's going to start by targeting this elite one, which at the moment is just 2 health away from death. This is a base attack of 2, so they'll draw from the top, and it's a -1. So that's only 1 damage, which means it's just a 1 away from death. And now for the attack on Living Corpse number 4, it's a +1. Wow, so that's 3 damage. And we can see that 4 already had 6 damage. It only takes 7 to kill it, so this does indeed wipe it out. His turn is now over, and it goes to us. And well, our decision is pretty clear. We need to do 1 damage to this Living Corpse right here, and in fact, we don't even have to do that, because when the Living Corpse activates, it's actually going to damage itself, but we may as well do the honors, right? So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to spend the Venom Shiv to move down here. Actually, no, we'll use the Swift Bow to get our movement of 1, and now we'll do the Venom Shiv, which is an attack of 3, plus poison, and an experience point against this Living Corpse. So that's 3 plus, -1, that's fine, that's 2 damage. We're going to generate an experience for ourselves, which means we actually go right up to 10. And these 2 damage are enough to actually wipe out this Living Corpse. And with that, we've cleared out all the monsters from this dungeon, and we have successfully completed the scenario. We were on our last breaths of exhaustion. We only had 1 more turn left in us, and in fact, I think that Tattersail was pretty much there too. This was an incredibly tight game, but in the end, we are victorious. Now that the scenario is over, let's go ahead and do a little bit of bookkeeping. The first 2 things would happen regardless of whether we won or lost the scenario. The first is we can gather up all the gold that we were able to acquire, so we have 7 right here. But if you look at the back of the rulebook, you'll see this really nice table, and it says that since this is a level 1 scenario, that means that every gold piece is actually worth 2 gold each. So that means we walked away with 14, Looks like Icarium only picked up 1 coin, so they walked away with 2. And lastly, so did Tattersail, unfortunately. We were the ones who got really greedy running around grabbing that gold, realistically mainly from that one chest. The other thing we would do no matter what is calculate our overall experience. Now, going back to this same graph, you'll see that at a level 1 scenario, we would get 6 experience for successfully completing the mission. We then add that experience to the experience we accrued throughout the scenario, and we see that we had 10 in the scenario right here, so that means we got 16 total. We look over to Icarium, he has, let's see, 10 as well, so that's 16. And lastly, Tattersail was able to get 16 plus 6 is going to actually bring them up to 22, and puts her in the lead trying to get to the 2nd level. And it is worth restating that all 3 of us would have gotten our accrued experience for the mission even if we had not successfully completed it, we just wouldn't have gotten that 6 extra bonus experience. Lastly, let's take a look at the battle goals that have been hidden for our companions throughout the entire game. As we know, ours said Scrambler, which said take only short rests during the scenario. We were successfully able to do that. We never did a long rest, not even once, so that has 1 check mark. And we look down over here, we can just cross this off right here, and we are 1/3 the way towards getting one of these perks as a big bonus. Next up, we have Icarium. Let's see what his battle goal was. It says, Sadist, kill 5 or more monsters during this scenario. Well, I wasn't keeping exact track, but I am pretty darn sure that he killed 5, at least 5, if not a little bit close. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to him. And lastly, we have Tattersail, who is quite sad because this battle goal right here said Opener. Be the first to kill any monster in this scenario. And the problem is that Icarium was able to get in and actually get that first kill by pushing that hound into the trap before Tattersail was able to do that. So unfortunately, she does not get this little check mark, but I guess as a consolation prize, she was able to get a lot more experience than the rest of us. And with that, this scenario is officially over. All 3 characters will travel back to Gloomhaven where they can spend their newfound gold to get some fancy new pieces of equipment and continue to go on more and more adventures trying to get more experience to level up and do all sorts of really cool things.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed this playthrough. It is certainly the longest, but also possibly the most difficult one I've ever sat down to do. And my goal here was just to give you an idea of what it's like to sit down and play an average game of Gloomhaven. Obviously, with the random dungeon generator, it was a little bit thematically disjointed, going from bandits into demons, and then finally ending up with some oozes and some living corpses. But I also wanted to show a variety of different monsters that come in the game and how they really can activate and do some pretty different stuff, you know, going from just the hound that might just run around and make people less good, you know, muddling them for a turn because they're scared, but then you have the oozes that damage themselves and split into 2, and they kind of end up killing themselves off. And to a certain degree, I think that this team of characters, they got a little bit lucky near the end there. It was a bit of a coin flip as to whether they were going to win that scenario or not. They were really exhausted. I mean, the character we were playing, the Scoundrel, only had 1 more turn left in them. I think the Spellweaver had maybe 1 more turn there as well. The Brute probably could have gone for a couple more turns, but at a certain point, when they're out of health, every time they take damage, they have to discard another card into their lost pile, and that just really accelerates the game towards everybody being exhausted. So I think it was going to go one way or the other. And the way those action cards came out did help out the characters, but they also were able to, near the end, utilize some of their big abilities that they maybe were either saving until the moment where they really, really need it, or in the case of the Spellweaver, just use that amazing ability again because, well, they're this awesome magic character that has the ability to pull their cards back and do all these really big effects multiple times throughout the game, which is a very cool thing to see. In the end, I think this playthrough was pretty representative of what Gloomhaven can be like, with the tension of managing your resources so that you don't become exhausted, as well as just the highs and lows of some really big misses, as well as putting together some cool combos and having some really big moments where you might do something like do 12 damage on a monster and kill it in one fell swoop after trying to put all the pieces together and do that like we were able to do in the middle part of the game. So I think with that, I don't have too much else to say about this one given playthrough. It's safe to say that it's obvious that this box is gigantic. There's so much more in the game. I showed 7 different types of enemies, but I think there are over 40 that come in the box. So there are a lot of other different things that come in there, as well as the overall campaign, which I didn't even touch on because I just wanted to show the mechanics and how the game worked, but not the story that you'll actually be working your way through. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. As always, I'd like to thank everyone who's been supporting this channel through Patreon, including all of these producer level pledges. If you too would like to directly support everything I do here, you could do so at patreon.com/JonGetsGames, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you'd like to see more full game playthroughs like this one, as well as in-depth board game reviews and vlogs, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.